States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. I appreciate everybody being available for an early start. Our meeting last week was postponed due to snow, and so we have a pretty full schedule tonight that we're going to try to get through. In addition, Selectman Damon McQuaid and his wife had their second baby a week ago, and he is not with us tonight. He's working on his new job, but he assures me he'll be back as quickly as possible. Is there any public comment from the board?
Congratulations to Damon and his wife.
Baby's name is Jack.
Jack.
Any public comment from the public? Okay. So our first appointment is the introduction of the Lunenburg Grange, and I call their members up and ask them to introduce themselves. Good evening.
Good evening. Chris Menard, 672 Page Street. I'm the secretary of the Lunenburg Grange, and I'll have my daughters and Matt introduce themselves.
I'm Alyssa Menard. I'm Lauren.
You guys have titles, right?
Assistant Stewart.
Ian?
The Stewart.
Okay.
And I'm Matthew Allison, and I'm the lecturer.
Okay.
We have some handouts. Did you guys get
Sure.
these ahead of time?
Yes, thank you.
So you're going to be lecturing, huh?
More program director, pretty much.
I'm going to hand a few out to the back.
That sounds better than lecturer.
Yeah, right?
Everybody wants another lecture.
All right, so introductions, we just had, so just a little bit about what we're about. I gave you a fact sheet, which is some compilation of facts that I've kind of pulled together through the meetings, along with the rest of the Grange members. We're still kind of totally figuring out what we're about in Lunenburg again, but I'll also read you the Grange mission. So this just came out this week from the National Grange. So the Grange strengthens individuals, families, and communities through grassroots action, service, education, advocacy, and agricultural awareness. So who couldn't get behind that, right? Great goals. So why are we here tonight? Well, first of all, would offer any of you to come to our next meeting. Our next meeting is March 1st at 7 o'clock. It's Friday. We meet the first Friday of the night. We've just moved back to the library as being our primary meeting location. So you're all welcome to join. It's a non-political event group. It's a group of like-minded community folks. I guess primarily we're here just to introduce ourselves. So in the future, if we have requests of the town, we're already using town buildings, but if we're looking for permits or things that fall within the Board of Selectmen's purview, that we would, at least have that first meeting, and then after that, it would be who are these guys? Some of you have been in town longer than I. You probably remember the Grange in its old days. We're probably a long way from having a Grange fair, but in the future would like to bring that tradition back. I had never been to them, but perhaps some of you have. So that's really all I had. Some facts here, but if there's any questions, maybe one of the four of us could answer.
Is there anything we can do to make your startup easier?
I think from my perspective, and maybe the others have some, I think getting the word out is a big one. I think if you have ideas on how we as a community-based organization could even help out in town, feed us the requests, and maybe we can rally some support around that. Towards the bottom of this, I had some relations to the various boards and agencies that I came up with, or we came up with, our group came up with. So if you have any other ideas, feed that back. For those of you that are on Facebook or in the, on live TV, I guess I'm on TV. We have a Facebook page. You can, Lunenburg Grange, number 169, and you can find it. Like it, and you'll see what's going on and any other things we're posting. We have web email address if you have any questions. It's lunenburggrange@gmail.com, so we can get those and respond to those. But I think get the word out at this point. We're kind of in the forming stage. April, we plan to get our charter from the National Grange. So that would be April 5th, I think, the first
Do
Friday. of
they
April.
charge you much to belong?
Yeah, so it's, an individual membership is $40, so that's for local, state, and national dues. And then a family is capped out at $80. My daughters introduced themselves. They're a part of the Grange, are actually part of the executive committee as stewards and assistant steward. So it's open to anyone 13 and a half and older. But then along with it comes a junior Grange, which is from ages 4 through 14. So again, it's really a family activity.
Does the national organization charge you very much?
So that $40, I think 13 of it stays here, maybe 13 of it goes to Mass, and about 13 of it goes to the National Grange. But they help us with things like insurance. They've certainly helped us get stood up. In the first year, they will feed us money to get us started and going. We may have additional fundraisers as the year goes on, either for our own efforts and events or for any community events that may be looking for that kind of thing. Matt, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do actually. And you asked how you could help us. Excuse me. You could consider us in one of your later articles about utilization of the TCP. It would be very beneficial to have a dedicated space because there's a decent amount of material that's required for the meetings, and it would just be a really good area to have to collaborate.
So you need storage, and you can't have that at the library.
Right, and it doesn't need to be a huge amount of storage, and it's not something that won't fit in the trunk of a car, but it just would be much more convenient, and it would give us a base and something to do in between the meetings. So we do get to keep $13 with the $40 membership. The family membership includes 2 adults, 23 or older, and the family membership includes I believe it's unlimited children under 23. I think it's 23 or 24.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but it's $80 for a family.
So yeah, and the family membership is a benefit to the family and to the Grange because it is a community building organization, and kids will bring parents and parents will bring kids. So it's just one leads the other.
Great.
It's very exciting. Thank you for getting this going again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, our 6:40 appointment is for a Sunday entertainment license for Kindred Spirits, 324 Electric Avenue, for March 17th, 2019. Hi there.
That's me.
Good.
Having a St. Patrick's Day party?
Yeah, we're looking to get entertainment for a couple hours in the afternoon.
Okay, let me just find you.
It's like fun.
Let me just
It's
find
been there
your
like
app-
every year for Mickey for years, so we're hoping to continue the tradition.
Oh, on St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah, yeah,
We do Irish things.
yeah.
All right, so it looks like your paperwork's in order and the fee's been paid. Any questions or comments from the board? I would-
No, and you said you've been doing this every year?
Well, Mickey has, we just took it over. We just bought the bar, so we wanted to continue his tradition.
Sounds like a great idea.
Okay, I would make a motion that we approve the Sunday entertainment license for Sunday, March 17th, 2019 for the guitar player for the afternoon hours at Kindred Spirits.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, good luck, have fun.
Thank you. Come on down.
We have 5 minutes before our scheduled appointment with the DPW. Let me see what we can do. Okay, we do have one interview appointment, reappointment, resignation, and that is to announce the resignation of David Prokofiew from the Planning Board And I assume that we're going to be looking for a replacement until the election?
Yes, the position, the vacancy was advertised, and it's tentatively on the March 5th agenda for a joint meeting.
Okay, so
So is
that's,
someone identified already?
No one has submitted an application yet. So,
but the expectation is that if we have a candidate pool, we would have a joint meeting with the
Yes.
planning board, and we would appoint somebody to serve between now and the election.
correct.
And the election, we've already gotten on the ballot or the
It's an opening,
whatever.
that it's an opening.
It would
right.
be an opening on the.
Right.
At the
okay.
caucus.
But is that in addition to the couple that are listed at the clock? I know there's like a 2-year and a 5-year open now. Would that add to that, or, well,
If,
if it adds to it, we'd add one, is that correct?
this is what I was told by the town clerk, if the vacancy was not filled by joint appointment, the board would need to notify the town clerk to add that position to the ballot.
But even if it was, even if an appointment was made, it's only till the next election, which is
Correct, yes.
May 19th or something.
So that
right?
position has to be added to
Right.
the caucus.
That's what I was
So
checking.
that, there's 3?
Well, right now, there's a 2-year and a 5-year. I don't know if either of them was Mr. Prokopiev's. That's what,
Yeah,
we
right,
should do a little
right.
bit of homework. All right? But, okay, so we'll take that up. We'll accept the resignation. Do we need a motion or anything to accept the resignation?
You don't need a motion.
No, okay.
Just
But
an
we will,
announcement.
we will have that on the agenda on the, at our next meeting to, if we have candidates, to meet jointly with the planning board.
Okay, I'd like to thank Mr., how do you pronounce that?
Prokopiev.
Prokofiev for his efforts on the town's behalf.
All righty, I think we have 6:45 now, so the next appointment is with the DPW Director and World Tech, and this is a discussion regarding the Complete Streets Tier 3 application that's due April 1st.
Hi.
Hi there, how are you?
Good to see you all. Again. So we're talking about complete streets tonight. And give you a little bit of an update. We met with the town manager and Jack to discuss, what's that? Oh. How's that, better? Okay. To discuss the previous application and then what we need to do moving forward. And there's been, I saw the email, there was an email that went out about getting community groups together and all that to reevaluate what is on your prioritization plan and what would be most appropriate to submit for funding. We've been involved with a lot of these. When the program first came out, there was a lot more money in the program because they were trying to get people interested in complete streets. And a lot of cities and towns signed up. They submitted prioritization plans, or they submitted policies, adopted their policies, submitted prioritization plans. And I think the bottom line is, not that complete street principles are not important, they're really important. And they connect all modes of transportation and they improve safety and all of those things. But I think really the bottom line that most cities and towns signed up for it because there may be $400,000 available that they can do some improvements within their community.
It's a good reason.
What's that?
That's a good reason.
That's a good reason. So initially, the program had a fair amount of funding in it, and over the last several cycles, it's now over-programmed. As a matter of fact, it's probably in my close to 40 years in this business, a lot of which has been helping cities and towns secure federal and state funding. It's been oversold.
So is there less money available, or is there just way more people applying? Or is it both?
Both. But probably the latter. If you look at the map right now, if you go on to MassDOT's website and you look at the Complete Streets map, initially there were just a couple of cities and towns that lit up with the colors. You look at it now and it's full. As a matter of fact, last round, they told communities, if you have received a Complete Street application already,
A grant,
don't,
you mean?
what's that?
You mean a grant? Not an application, a grant?
Excuse me, money. If you received a grant, if you received the money, don't apply, because they wanted to try and spread it around and give it to communities that have not received money. I had a discussion with the manager and Jack, and unfortunately, with programs like this, and even tip projects, right? I'll go to a community, I'll say, look, give me your top 5 projects, or top 10 projects, and we'll look at those projects, and number 1 is, this community really needs to do number 1, and I'll look at that list, and I'll say, you know what, number 1 and number 2, I know they're important projects for the community, but number 3 is where you're going to get funding, because number 3 is where you'll get support. It checks off a lot of boxes, right? And those boxes are the ones that now the reviewers are looking at. And that brings me to another point. In the beginning, all you had to do was apply for Complete Streets and you were pretty much guaranteed funding. But now, because it's so competitive, they have put an evaluation process to this. And so they're looking at each and every aspect of the project. So I know one of the projects I think was, that we had initially talked about was connectivity downtown. Another one was the beach. And we have reevaluated those, and we believe that the downtown project is still the most viable because you're connecting school, you're connecting senior center, you're connecting downtown. We would like to even be able to articulate the fact that there's transit, maybe not right on the corridor, but there's transit close by, that this is also going to help to connect to. I don't know if there's a lot of bus service in Lunenburg,
Not a
but
lot.
I do. Montechusett has a bus that comes through town. All right, but again, it's how many boxes can we check off that are going to have the reviewers say, you know what, this is a viable project.
So it's number 1 on this sheet.
It was
what
not,
you're
well, when we looked at this before, I think we picked 1, 3, and 10. There were like 3 of them that we tried to put together. We're reevaluating that now because we want to try and cobble together a project that we know
I
that
mean, which one are you talking about now? Number 1?
Number 8.
it was, Project 1, it was Main Street at Oak. It was a sidewalk connection project.
Right, okay. Mhm.
And then there was 4, which was improved pedestrian crossing from the Ritter Building to Town Hall. And then number 8, which was Village Area Memorial Drive improvements, again, which were, I believe, were sidewalks and handicap ramps and things of that nature.
So you can put, applications in for that much money?
You can put in applications for up to $400,000.
Okay.
Now, a lot of communities have dovetailed, because they, for example, they won't pay for like paving, for example. So you can do sidewalks and curbing and bike lanes and things like that, but when all of that is done, if you want to then mill and overlay the street so it looks like one complete project, that you can't use complete street money for that. So that would be something you might use Chapter 90 or just local funds to do. And some communities are doing that. The other thing, too, that I wanted to mention is, because it's so competitive, there are no guarantees with this. So we're working with the town of Merrimack, somewhat similar to Lunenburg. We submitted, they just got it, but we submitted 4 times. 4 times they submitted, and they finally got it.
And they submitted the same one? every
Same
time?
one, tweaking every time.
Yeah.
And if you call and you ask Mass DOT, gee, where did our application fall short? You get crickets. They're not going to tell you, which is kind of tough. So what we try to do is make sure that, looking at other applications, looking at other approved projects, that we're articulating the projects so that we can check those boxes. It gets back to checking the boxes. And it's not necessarily, the town may say, well, gee, that's not really our top priority. Our top priority is this one. It's not matching the project to the program. It's matching the project to, or I should say, it's matching the money to the project. You know what I mean? We have to find that project that's gonna
Check off the right boxes.
So if I can recap where we are, we originally put a list of 15 things together.
right.
You guys prioritized 3 of them, what'd you say, 1, 4, and 8? And I'm seeing that there's a April 1st date. Now, what is that to do? What is the April 1st date to do?
So the April 1st date is the next round of applications, but that's the other thing. It tends to be a moving target. Right now, they're saying April 1st to submit applications again, right? Now, that's not a heavy lift, because essentially we have an application together. It's just a question of how are we going to repackage this thing? How are we going to tell the story, right? Because a lot of this, when we submitted the application, we submitted estimate, we submitted concept level. It's concept level kind of stuff. It was a good package. But I think that as we move forward, it needs to be more in how are we telling the story? how is this a good project for the town? How is it connecting, point A to point B? How is it accommodating bicycles? How is it accommodating pedestrians? All of those sorts of things, As I said, even if it's one bus coming through town a day, are we able to connect to, making it easier for people to get to wherever that bus stop is, even though it may be outside the project area? We want to talk about it. So it's telling the story.
So knowing what you know now, do you have a recommendation on prioritization, or reprioritization of the 15?
So when you have this list, the list, they call it a prioritization plan, but 1 is no more important than 15.
Understood.
So these are not in any particular order. I know you had 15. The minimum they wanted on your prioritization plan was 15. Most communities that we didn't do this part for you. Most of the communities that we work with will have anywhere from 25 to 30 on the list. Now, Lunenburg obviously is a smaller town. We do the city of Peabody. Plymouth was the worst. I mean, they kept sending us projects. 80 projects they had on their list. I called the guy up and I said, stop sending projects because there's no way you'll ever be able to do all of these. If you just looked at the complete street list, it dwarfed the entire allotment for the state that would have been going to play. It wasn't going to happen, So at some point, I'm not sure where Mass DOT will be in terms of updating prioritization plans, because a lot of communities have already completed projects, and they may want to be adding projects. We look at this as a living document for a community. And whether you're using this just for complete streets, or you're using this as a planning document for capital planning and so forth, when you go to town meeting and you're looking for funds, it's one say, yeah, we need money. Well, for what? As opposed to coming in, we need money, and here's why. And I know Public Works has done a good job with that, even with pavement management. At one point, hey, we need money for paving. Now, with the pavement management program, we're able to show exactly why we need that money. So it's the same thing. Hopefully, Mass DOT is going to have an opportunity for cities and towns to update their plans.
I have a question. Does the state ever grant part of your request? Just say, we can do number 1, but we can't do...
So we put a project together. It was actually the one in Merrimack. And it was actually, we combined 2 projects, and they gave them one of the 2.
Oh, okay.
So we're rethinking that too, because one was for X and one was for X minus, it was a lesser amount. And of course, they picked the one with the lesser amount. So we're kind of rethinking that too, because we don't want to put in 2 projects. They're both viable, they both complement each other, and then you only get one, and then, okay, so now what are we supposed to do with this other piece? You know what I mean? So that's why we're looking at this right now. As I said, we've been in touch with Public Works and the manager's office, and we'll continue to work with them so that we can kind of cobble this thing together. I know there was some discussion about, let's get the community together, let's, whether it's planning board or community groups, or if you have a complete streets committee and that sort of thing. I think that's great when you're putting your prioritization plan together. I think it's another thing when you're actually picking a project, because you may get your committee saying, oh, let's go after number 6. In our opinion, number 6 may not be doable. They're not
Well,
gonna fund it.
we could always update the prioritization plan, after you submit this.
Oh, sure.
Right? You can add to it.
Yeah, and that's what, I think at this point, we've been trying to get indication from Mass DOT. Once you have a prioritization plan, can it be updated? And we've been getting mixed
Oh, really?
messages, relative to what they've approved. In terms of a town, you guys could do this all day long and update this. In terms of what Mass DOT has approved, because remember, this is an approved prioritization plan. Mass DOT approved this plan.
If we wanted to add, then that would be like an addendum, and it wouldn't be
Right.
part of the approved
Right.
list yet.
And the question is, are they allowing that yet for cities and towns to then come back and amend their prioritization plan? I don't think they're at that point yet.
Okay, so help me understand the process again. I heard you say the 15 is a living document, it's been approved, it's something we can use for our own capital plans as well as for complete streets, but there's something called a Tier 3 application that's due April 1. So
Right.
what is that?
So let me start from the beginning. So in the very beginning of this process, the town adopted a complete streets policy, and that was submitted to Mass DOT for approval. You had to get an 80 or higher in order to have your policy approved. Once your policy was approved, it now made you eligible for technical assistance funding, which I think the town applied for, you got it, and you used that technical assistance funding to create this prioritization plan. That was submitted, the prioritization plan was then approved. Prioritization plan is Tier 2. Tier 1 was your policy, Tier 2 is the plan, Tier 3 is now you are eligible, doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you're eligible to apply for construction funding. That's Tier 3. That's what's due April 1st.
Okay.
That's the Tier 3. Tier 3 is construction funding. Tier 3 is, as I mentioned, we applied in Merrimack 4 times. Peabody got it for a shot, and again, sometimes it has to do with demographics and population, and one other important aspect is having the legislative delegation, knocking on the door, making a phone call, writing a letter. That doesn't hurt either.
Which is something we may be able to tie in when we get to Senator Tran's request. But, so we're now at a point where we got 15 of these, and we're trying to get some intelligence from you in terms of, we'd like to do all 15 of them. The state's going to, if we're lucky, give us some money. What is your advice to us as we put this Tier 3 application together as to which of these are most likely to get funded? I guess that's the exercise, right?
So I think what we put together were 3 projects last time. I think what we want to do is try and put some composite of that together and better articulate the story as to why these are good projects. I would stick with what we have. I don't think I'd go off of the 3 that we had identified. And it may be that, one of them maybe one of them we take off. But I think right now we're evaluating what is the best way to repackage this thing. And try and fill in any gaps that we think may have been the reason that it didn't get approved. And having said that, it may not get approved next time either.
Right.
But my philosophy is, and Jack will tell you, because Jack known me for many years, I don't go away. We're just going to keep coming back till.
Now, I read somewhere that they were looking for bicycle improvements, and I don't see any in these 3.
So what they want is, they want to accommodate all modes of transportation. So essentially, it's pedestrians, bicycles, transit, those sorts of things. So within the application the last time, I think we may have talked about either bike lanes or sharrows or some type of bicycle accommodation on the roadway. I mean, obviously, we're not into any design aspects of this. It's more at a level of, concept level. We will identify those things moving forward. I know, for example, Middleton just got a Complete Streets Award, and essentially it was just a road crossing to connect where their bike path is going to end and start on the other side of the road, and essentially it was just a crossing. So what we need to do is make
Hopefully
sure.
that was affordable.
Yeah, and so the thing is to articulate as many of those things as we possibly can.
Yeah, because I don't see bikes in any of those 3 things at this point.
Number 2.
But we aren't looking at 2.
No,
We're
right.
looking at 1. Yeah,
Well, remember,
that's what I'm saying,
these were
number
all,
2
these were
is bikes,
submitted
but
as a group.
The 1, 4, and
8.
8 don't say bikes.
Right.
And some of it, it's not like you're going to be able to put a shared use path in or a separated bike lane. It may just be that you're providing striping on the street, so you have sharrows on the roadway and that sort of thing. So, and I know that some of these locations have limited right-of-way, so you can't put a bike lane. Sometimes there's parking. Are you going to take parking out to put a bike? So there's those balances. But I think the idea here is as my staff and the office are looking at this thing, where can we check more boxes?
Right. How do you present it?
Right. Tell the story.
Tell a story.
And if I may just ask one question, because all along, I was an advocate for the Whalum Road project, which is item 3. And you say you were looking for things that fit into the criteria, but in my mind, that project fits so well because it's the densest part of town. There's absolutely no walkability to the town beach, and
Which
really just general parking
3.
safety
Number 3?
crisis. I've been advocating for improvements in that area prior to there being complete streets. So when this project came up as part of this, I thought it would be fabulous to have the opportunity to improve that area. It involves recreation. It involves an area of density, an area with no sidewalks. And so I just have to throw out that I am, even if not through complete streets, think the town should be highly motivated to look at that recreation spot and the amount of people that could walk to it and cannot actually safely access it at this time. There's so much room for improvement there, and it's a really well-run beach. A lot of the community goes there for swim lessons, and I've just have to mention it every time because I think if there were grant money available, I agree that the walkability, like getting from the Ritter to Town Hall, there's no clear route, and it's, I agree that those things are improvements too, but I think there's huge impact with number 3, and I feel like it would be an appealing project and an easy one to write about when you look at Emerald Place and Whalum Luxury and the amount of people that could actually benefit from walkability or easier passage.
I was thinking about the Town Beach project, and I was thinking that piece of land right across from the town beach is for sale. If the town bought that, used the front of it for parking, and then sold off house lots, I mean, that's the perfect piece of land, because there's no place to park.
There's no safe parking.
There's no, and even if you put a sidewalk in, that even makes it worse for parking.
Yeah, you'd have to try to widen the road or something and
Right,
get the
and
engineers in, but
And you just don't have the land.
even
So-
just the striping, there's no awareness for like park ahead or,
dismal, but I think we should think about buying that land. Once it's gone, it's gone.
So we'll take another look at that.
Yeah, I love item 3.
I had another sheet that had notes on it from when we were here the last time, and I thought that there was a reason that we said that we didn't think that one would
I mean, it's a dangerous spot, so if there was money to be put there, but also I feel like I've been to all the Complete Streets meetings, even as a citizen before I was here, and contributed to the meeting where these 15 were created from, and public safety, and everybody highlights the town beach as an area that needs improvement.
Right.
And there's recreation and accessibility issues and all sorts of things. So I just like to say it because I like to be consistent with my thoughts, and I think 3 would be a real benefit to the town. And to another part of the neighborhood, instead of always sort of hyper-focusing on one thing, I think giving a project to the Whalum area would be well-deserved.
I just made the assumption that the reason it didn't make it higher on the list was its price tag. I don't know if that came into it at all.
I think one of the other things too was limited right-of-way.
All right.
Jack, is that roadway limited right-of-way
Which is that, Rich?
to the town beach?
In the town beach?
I thought there was one of them that we had limited right-of-way, and we thought.
I think when you say the Whalum area, Katie, there are sidewalks. The thing that drew me to this project was with the Summer Street project, that's going to have sidewalks on both sides because of the funding source. It's sort of an overkill. You could actually walk, the distance that's contiguous in sidewalk is from the lower part of Summer Street all the way up Summer Street to Whalum Road, which does have sidewalks, which would need improvement. Then you come to the traffic light. That's where the sidewalk ends.
Yep.
So this project,
CVS.
if this is what you're thinking, right? The project would go from the Route 13 side of Emerald Place, where there's a grassy strip, and I don't know if you remembered me telling you this, was at the time this whole thing was configured, the developer talked the town into just having, there's a little sign there that says pedestrian walkway. There's space enough there to install a sidewalk, there's no right-of-way issue there. And then that would bring you to the Rotary. It may be a little tight, I'm not sure what the property lines on the right-of-way are across the street at those waterfront condos, but then, and that would be added. And then there would be a sidewalk added, somehow we'd have to figure out the center line and to the beach house. Is that how you recall it?
Yeah, and even just the striping for parallel parking, like to create, even, there's no lineage to say, like, here's where people park, and, I mean, the police have been detailing it really well throughout the summer, but...
Places, there is no designated parking lot.
Yep.
It's catch as catch can, and mothers and fathers and children sometimes get out on the traffic side, and sometimes the kids run around on the traffic side. I'm not sure that a designated sidewalk would prevent the kids from running around, but it certainly would be helpful. Yeah, we'd have to fit that all in. That's not in this plan. It is conceptually, but yeah, we would have to fit
Yeah,
that
because there's
in.
no good way to walk, and I know some people who do take the risk in walking to the town beach, and it's scary.
Oh, yeah, you walk along that sort of dead area there from the Emerald Place condos right up along the edge of pavement.
Yep,
And that would be much more inviting if it were
a sidewalk.
Yeah, and if it was a raised sidewalk, which of course it would be, a car can always hop the sidewalk, but not likely.
And there's truly the people who can walk. So even if as you look at walkability projects, most people drive here, there, or everywhere. But with Emerald Place, you truly have walkers. You have people that can say, let's
Also
walk there.
connects somewhat
There's
to
a lot of neighborhoods
that
close
that
by.
also connects somewhat to the
Yeah.
the sidewalk on the lakefront. So we have spoken about that. We spoke to
look at it.
town manager about that. We look at it. We feel quite candidly that it's that one. It's the one in the center. And that's not based on what I think is better, or what's my preference, or Rich's preference, or Heather's preference. It's what, really can't overstate. You have to configure this to what's going to sell it to
And
the
my
state.
motivation for advocating for it is just the concern of safety. I mean, how long have I been there? I mean, if you added up the hours, not a lot, because it's primarily just 2 weeks a year. I go there for swim lessons, and I've seen 2 cars get sideswiped, while I'm sitting on the beach, meaning a car, coming through actually hits like the mirror off of a parked car.
Yeah, and you may,
And that's just two
I'm
out of
guessing,
2
but
weeks a year.
You don't have to go there. You can just have to drive through to see there's a problem.
Yeah.
But this might, the width, the lane width, and the width of a ADA accessible sidewalk might do something to narrow that road. And on the opposite side, where people sort of go up on the bank into park, we don't know whether,
Maybe that could that
might
be
be-
scraped a little to actually
well,
make
if it's
it?
not our property,
Or is it
no.
Not yet.
5 feet off? No?
Yeah, I don't have the map in front of me, but, you have to have designated width
Right away, yeah.
right
Yeah,
away,
right away.
not just right away, but widths of lanes can only be, what is it, 10.6 or 11
11
feet minimum? And then the sidewalk, which would have to be what, 5'2"?
5 feet to the curb and then 6 inches for the curb, so.
Okay, so 5'6", and then kind of work it back from the fence and see what you have on the other side.
I think one of the things we have to keep in context, though, is that this is a document that we use for several things. We are in fact trying to get the state to grant us some money for projects that fits what they define as complete streets. If you go with just a safety item, I mean, number one is Oak and Main Street. Well, I know when the high school was being built, there was a lot of safety issues and concerns there. I went to a council on aging meeting last week, and there's a lot of safety issues concerning the senior center and Memorial Drive and the parking there.
Exactly.
I think we have to address some of them within our own capital plan
Indeed.
as best
Yeah.
we can. And, certainly the town beach is among them. I look at the price tag for what we put on the priority for the town beach, and it's a big project. It's $347,000. I'm sure there's some stuff short of that even if it were on our capital plan,
Sure.
we could do to make the traffic and the safety of town beach safer than it is today, even if we don't
Yep,
go for
exactly.
the whole.
Well, it
McGill.
gives us the plan, which is
Exactly.
important. And to your point, which is a
Exactly.
point well made, is this Oak Ave. I mean, come heck or high water here, I'm going to get a sidewalk in that little grassy area. Seen too many times the sidewalk ends, and where kids have to navigate that slope and then jump back on the sidewalk. So you're right. That's
What was
something
the
that you'll see
total?
in the capital plan or just through the town.
It's 311, 563.
So last time we did the 311 for those 3 projects.
For
Okay.
1, 4, and 8, it's 311. 563.
So we asked for a similar amount as.
3 projects.
Actually, there were 4. It was 1, 4, 8, and 10.
I think the total request last time was
What's
close, the total request last time was close to 400.
Yeah.
10, I didn't hear you mention 10 before.
Which, if they're giving out 4, you're not going to ask for 3. Right?
Right, but you're right. But
Go for the gusto.
Right.
you want to really focus in on something, 1 or 2 things, and even if it doesn't make it all the way to the 400, so that the perception is, which the perception in that case is reality, hey, look, these are really important to us. We'd like to get 400, we'd like to get, more, but listen, this is something that the board can get behind, the townspeople have gotten behind, and as Rich says, articulate it, tell the story, embellish it, not to the point of dishonesty, but embellish the importance, as Mrs. Adams did.
I don't understand. You said 1, 3, 4, 1, 4, 8,
And 10.
That's like $800,000.
No. 1 was 114,000. 4 was 16,000. 8 was 115,000, and 10 was 129,000.
Oh, okay, so you're not talking about total estimated project cost, you're just talking about the complete street funding?
Right.
Okay.
So what's the next step for us to tweak the 15, to submit your tier 3, to have the best chance of getting a favorable response?
Yeah, so what we need to do is go back and look at this. We're actually, I shouldn't say go back, we've already been looking at it, and really coming up with what this should look like, how we can embellish, how we can add additional information, and how we can sort of repackage this thing. We have concerns seeing what they did in Merrimack, that if we put in 4 projects and then they pick one, they're going to pick the one for 16,000. That does nothing for us. You know what I mean? So it's taking a look at that. Once we have that, just working with the manager and Public Works is really to kind of put this thing together so that it can be uploaded to the portal.
All right, so we have 3 meetings between now and April 1st. We're going to see you again before then?
You could, if you want me to come in, or we can just, work with the manager and Jack, and once we come up with what we believe is going to be your best shot at doing this.
I mean, I certainly think it's fine to put together, what you recommend, and the town manager will determine whether it needs action from us, but I think to get from where we are with the concerns we've shared with you tonight to where we need to be, and
if you like having me, I'd be happy to come.
I have a question. I still don't understand the numbers, because the estimated project cost is just about the same as complete street funding requested. And so
Where are you looking?
I'm looking at the sheet.
Which sheet are you looking at?
I'm looking at
The prioritization plan.
prioritization sheet. So it says total estimated project cost, then complete streets funding requested. And they're the same numbers, pretty
Total
much.
estimated cost. Project cost, is that what you're looking at? And then complete street funded request?
Right.
So for one, it says $81,719?
Yeah,
Is that what you're looking at?
yeah.
Okay.
So
And so
both
on
both are
this,
the same, both are 81.
right, so on here, what we did was when we included this, there are other items within the estimate that are not complete street eligible.
Well, how would we know that from the information you gave us?
How would you know that?
Yeah.
Because
I
we,
mean, I'm looking at what we were.
well, that's what it is.
I'm just looking at the information that we were given to review for this meeting, and
Yeah.
that information's not here, so how would we know that?
so in terms of complete streets money, those numbers are right. But when we submit the application, we submit it as a complete project. So there's some things, whether there's going to be some paving involved or some other things, we're going to include those items in the estimate, because the complete streets folks, the people at Mass DOT, want to see what the full estimate is. So as I mentioned, if there's some paving, let's see if there's paving in here. There may be some items in here, I don't think we broke it down completely. but there may be items in here that are not complete streets eligible.
When you say complete streets funding requested, that's not what you're requesting.
No, it is what they're requesting.
All right, so that's like $800,000 for those 4 items.
Yeah, 10 seems
no.
like expensive on the chart.
And this plan was created by another engineering firm.
Right.
So their numbers used at that time may differ slightly from the application.
Then do we have the chart of the,
Yeah, so, you know, we can't even discuss it if we don't have the correct information.
Well, I mean, the estimate is, whatever the estimate is, in terms of,
But how can we discuss it? Because we're looking at the relative value, and you're saying, oh, don't look at that because...
no, you can look at it, but the numbers are the numbers.
Yeah,
So-
right, the
so
numbers are the
When we
numbers.
prepared the estimate for the complete street application, we used the most current Mass DOT numbers for unclassified excavation, gravel borrow, granite curb. So whatever, we didn't prepare this. However they got to those numbers,
Well,
they got, but this does not add up
then
to
I
800.
think that we should have been looking at something different, because...
I don't have anything different for you to look at this point because the application hasn't been prepared because tonight's discussion was to decide on the projects.
but we already applied
But
once,
we need
so
the
where's that?
numbers. But we need the numbers to decide on the project.
See, I think the delta that you're struggling with might be number 10, because I've never heard number 10 before.
Then I can, the
Number-
numbers,
Right, because it's like $800,000 when you throw in number 10.
Well, number 10 is 400 by itself.
Right.
And I thought we were talking about 1, 4, and 8.
Right, and the town beach is cheaper than number 10.
Right.
Which felt expensive until,
Yeah, right, so...
so for example, if you look at number 1 on this sheet, which is the
Sheet we
revised,
have.
we had to submit this was the revised complete street
Okay.
prioritization plan list. If you look at it, it says, total estimated project cost, $270,000 for number 1.
Not on ours.
Now-
Okay.
No, this is not on that. The sheet you have is the prioritization plan that the other consultant prepared.
And
All
was
right,
it,
early on.
Jack, we're going to need to see the right sheet, all right? So, next time we talk about this, we need to see the one that we're going to submit.
Do you want to take
Two
this? Heather?
complete
You can take
streets.
this and print it for them?
Yeah, next meeting,
Well, you can have it.
next meeting. All right, Jack, so we'd like the information we need to make our discussion meaningful for the next meeting. So we'll move on for
and
this.
Mr. Chair, if I may add one thing to item 10, Oak Ave Northfield. If that were truly going to be done, I think we need to study the situation of drop-off and pickup, because that triangle is highly utilized.
Yeah, we discussed
For
that.
people to reroute, and if you take that away,
People
there
go down
may
and
be
turn around, come back.
a lot of unintended consequences of people having no place to go.
Okay.
Just one last piece of clarification, just so that when you do get this, all right? If, on this sheet, it has total, as I remember I mentioned that some items are eligible under complete streets, some are not.
Right.
So, for example, the first project, number 1, which is Oak Avenue, all right? The total project cost that we list on the sheet is $270,000.
All right, and that number is totally foreign to us, so when Jack comes back with that number, we can have this discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
thanks, thank you.
You know, I would like to talk about this whole prioritization sheet in more detail, because there are some things that are small money, you know, creating a crosswalk, you know, here and there. And also in the issue where they talk about high crash situations, there's 5 of them. I'd like those prioritized, you know, which is the most in need of fixing, you know, so that we could
I think that's a
start to work at
conversation
these
separate
things.
from complete
Yeah,
streets.
it totally is.
But it's
It totally
definitely a
is.
budget conversation and maybe a goal-setting conversation or something of that nature.
Right. It doesn't have to do with this, but when you're looking at all this information, you go, some of
Right.
these things with...
So we've identified a problem, so they should all have some version of a plan, probably.
Yeah, right, you know, and it's, you know, some of them are, you know,
Okay,
construct a crosswalk. How hard, you know, that can't be $100,000. You'd have to hope.
right, let's see, our workshop starts at 7:30, so let's see if we can knock off a couple of these other things. Ba, 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 ba. How about the pilot? Is that something we can pick?
Or the revote to extend the earth removal, that's one vote.
Okay, that's fair enough. You want to do that one next? Then number 2 on current business, revote to extend the earth removal permit, number 14.
Okay.
Who's going to talk to us about that?
That's just, it was, at the meeting that it was discussed last, tonight was the night that it was going to be discussed again, and it will be ready now on the March 5th meeting to be discussed again, not tonight. So it's just to revote
Oh,
to
okay, this is to extend,
that
okay, we
permit.
extended it
Yeah.
through tonight.
Yes.
And we need to extend it now to March 5th.
Correct.
Because that's when it will be ready.
Yes.
Can I get a motion to extend the permit number 14 until March 5th?
I make a motion to extend earth removal permit number 14, PJ Keating Company, until March 5th.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, superb. And can we do the pilot? I mean, that was just.
Yes,
It has
yep.
the, we were waiting for the town council to review the pilot, and,
Settle the solar?
yes,
Okay. Thank you.
let me find it myself.
It says final, Lunenburg Settler Solar.
Now, if we have other solar projects, will they follow, I'm sure that they'll also apply for pilots, and do they follow the same
The
formula?
Yes, the language in this was originally drafted by the regional assessor, provided by the regional assessor, and then reviewed by town council in whatever language he recommended. So it would,
So it'll be kind of probably standard for us if and when we have other solar projects?
yes, I would assume it would be similar to this document.
It would probably be similar for all pilots, right?
Yeah, that's what I was
I
wondering.
mean, the boilerplate anyway.
Oh,
Yes.
not just for solar, but
Right,
just for all
yeah.
pilots.
Because just to refresh your memory, I think we were okay with the idea of pilot. We were okay with the numbers in the pilot, but we felt that it was important that the town council review it for the legal piece of it. And did they come up with any changes? I know they were negotiating a couple of things back and forth. Was there anything major that we should take
Nothing
note of? No?
major.
Okay.
The only thing that I can think of is the completion date changed because of
Right.
the dates changed.
So this was an outstanding item. The other is, I think we have to wait for the clock to run out on our lack of action on the exercising the right, and then they can do whatever they
Right.
do next, right?
So do we make a motion? or
Yes,
we-
please,
all
if
right.
you choose to.
All right. Let's see. Which one, where is it in the current business?
It's under old business.
Oh, it's under old business. I make a motion that we agree to the payment in lieu of taxes agreement with Settler Solar LLC for personal property at 994 Northfield Road.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. What time we have? 7:24. You want to do,
Minutes?
yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do minutes and walks.
Right.
Okay, so we have minutes for December 18th, January 8th, and January 15th. And I know you had
I
some minutes.
would like two corrections on the January 8th meeting in the section, the motion where to take no action on the right of first refusal for the Chapter 61 property located at 994 Northfield. The second sentence says, Ms. Luck stated she researched the tax paid back to the town when properties are removed from Chapter 61. It says, in 2004, the town received $167,800
$37, and it should be since 2004, rather
So
than
it
in
didn't all occur in the
2004.
1 year.
Right,
It's
right,
just,
right.
okay,
It's
that's a
every,
cumulative number.
yes.
You want to make a motion that we accept it with that change?
Want me to make the motion? Okay, I make a
Or
motion
somebody
that we
make it.
accept the minutes with that change, and I have one more change too. Under committee reports, under the MART, it's reported that I said the complimentary ADA service to the fixed route is provided to affected people up to 3/4 of a mile from the route. And what it really is on either side of the route. So 3/4 of a mile to the left and the right of the route. So it involves more people are eligible. So I just wanted to change from to on either side of. I make a motion that we accept these changes.
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The others okay?
Yes, I didn't
Okay,
have any.
fine. I have a warrant for accounts payable in the amount of $171,195.18. Another accounts payable in the amount of $108,346.43. And a payroll in the amount of $785,965.88.
Can you just sign this? It's the license.
Okay, this is the,
And I think it's just
just me?
chairman.
Okay. That's the Sunday entertainment license that we already approved.
Everyone has to sign.
Any action file issues? I have one. The town manager evaluation is due no sooner than April 15th and by the town election, which is May 18th. So you can expect to get some forms. We're going, and some instructions very similar to in years past. You'll be asked to do an evaluation on the town manager's performance for the year, have a meeting with the town manager, and then submit them. There's some new open meeting law that I'll go over next week. We'll get it on the agenda, and I can just kind of talk next meeting. I'll talk about how it'll be handled. Unfortunately, the open meeting law, there's a new case law that says we can't circulate that
Our
Compilation?
evaluations.
the compilation prior to a public meeting. So what'll have to happen is the night we schedule to actually go over it after it's completed, we'll have the compilation, give it out, and have to work it that night. You won't be able to get it in advance. That's considered a violation. of
So
open
what
meeting
will
law.
the compilation consist of?
It'll just be the four of us. I'll combine them, but I can't talk to any of you about it prior to a public meeting. So when I give out the average, the average and the highlights as I've done in the past, you'll have your own document, you'll have a compilation of the other selectmen's documents, and we'll discuss it that night at that meeting,
Okay.
as opposed to getting it in advance.
Yeah,
That's all.
right,
And
right.
and I'll put out some instructions, but I've checked with both our Labor Council and our Town Council, and it's a relatively new case law on open meeting law, so everybody's struggling with how do you get the mission accomplished without violating the open meeting law.
Right.
So it'll be online, basically, that we do it at a meeting as opposed to doing it in advance, is the
Okay.
bottom line.
And,
But we have time, I'll get something to you, the form, kind of early March. You have till April 15th to actually complete it and have a meeting with the town manager. The town manager will do her own self-evaluation. We'll put that all together, and then we'll have a big happy party somewhere between the 15th and the election.
Okay, so next week we'll sort of have that timeline laid out too?
Yeah, I'll put it on the agenda so we can talk about it with some detail, and if you want to change anything, we can kind of discuss it and vote on it, but it's just an action item for now.
Okay, great.
My action item for now.
Thank you.
Any other action file issues? Okay. So now I think we're 7:30. Great. So let me just kind of set up what it is we've kind of tried to do here is down under current business is an agenda item that says discussion on plan to use TC Passios for municipal offices, school central offices, and community space, and workshop meetings with the following focus groups. And there were actually 4. One we completed already. It was the the historic groups, the Historic Society, the Historic Commission, and the Architectural Protection District Commission. We had a meeting with the majority of those people. We are planning to have meetings with Conservation, Parks, and Open Space as a group. And we're planning on having meetings with the library, the Senior Center, and the Boys and Girls Club, who are considered abutters to the Passios piece of this discussion. And then we're planning on having a meeting with town employees, PAC, and the school relative to their administrative offices, because they will be ones most impacted by any consolidation of municipal offices. So we've invited the Parks Commission, the Open Space Committee, and the Conservation Commission to be with us tonight, basically to talk about all of our work on the 5 buildings, if you will, to give us some inputs if they choose to. I'm told that the Parks Committee would like me to read something into the record. It has become clear to the Park Commission that additional field space as well as open park space is needed. The locations of the buildings in question should be considered prime land due to their location, and every opportunity should be taken to preserve ownership by the town. The Park Commission would benefit from the opportunity for further discussion should the buildings on these properties be demolished, leaving open land. And should the TC Passios become municipal offices, we would hope that the town would consider indoor recreation space. And that was a statement that the Park Commission voted and asked me to read into the record. So who all do we have? Do we have a quorum of any of those groups?
We have a quorum of the Open Space Committee.
Okay.
Without representation from Conservation Commission. So
Okay.
Conservation Commission is completely not represented.
Okay, and the school committee is not represented as a committee. Are you here? Do you want to be part of this workshop or not?
Me?
Yes.
As Parks?
Yes.
Parks, you said school.
Well, she's the Parks Commissioner on the Open Space Committee.
Okay, fair enough. So I guess we'll continue with open space. We'll note that conservation isn't represented. We'll note that the parks person on open space is here as a member of open space. And we'll take whatever time it takes to move down to this table and let PAC set us up, all right?
We don't need computers.
I think we're going to...
That one doesn't have a green light on. I don't know why. Set yourself short.
Well, we're not on the TV set, but we're on air over here, so I guess we can start. So what we're really, did you call yourselves to order?
Yes.
Okay. What we're really trying to accomplish here is there's a couple of things going on. As part of the whole 5 buildings process, we have a couple of items going before town meeting. One is as a result of input from the historical groups, the Preservation and Architectural Preservation Protection Committee. We're going to have 2 conveyance articles on there specifically for the Brooks House and the primary school. And the background on that is that they're on record saying that they believe we're either in or about to be in demolition by neglect on those 2 buildings, and that they want us to inhabit them or find another use for them. So we're going to ask the town to have the ability to convey them, which means for the most part to lease them, so that we can begin the process of having a bid process and see if anybody is interested. Now, it will come with a certain amount of restrictions, and the challenge will be to make it restrictive enough to satisfy the historical nature of the buildings, but attractive enough for someone to want to come up with a use for the building and/or the space, or some combination of them.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Just because it's being generalized, at that meeting, this is a recommendation of the Architectural Preservation District, and the Historical Commission did not attend our meeting, and we were told that they had an opposing opinion, and the Historical Society really didn't give an opinion. So before we generalize that the historic groups are suggesting this, I think we need to be very clear that the Architectural Preservation District was interested in selling the properties. The member from there that was from the Historical Commission said they felt opposite, and they didn't come to a meeting yet, and we were hoping to re-invite them. And the Historical Society really didn't place any opinions. So I just want to be specific that we're really being general, and we need to point out whose opinions are whose to be fair to all the different groups that need to be represented.
That is a fair assessment. However, the Architectural Protection District is the one with the authority to do what they did. And it wasn't an opinion, it was exercising their authority.
Okay, the authority to say to protect the building, but not to sell it, that is not their authority.
It's nobody's authority, that's why we're going to
Right,
town
they
meeting.
haven't been given the authority
That's why we're going to
sell.
town meeting.
So they made a recommendation to inhabit or convey.
Right.
Okay.
And
Right.
you characterize the conveyance as lease? Is the article conveyance more broadly defined?
It's on our agenda tonight, so it's not written yet.
Okay.
So where we stand today is convey. I think we have to articulate what does that mean.
Okay.
Yeah, I drafted sample articles that the board's going to discuss tonight.
Okay.
But it'll be clear. It'll be clear whether we're talking, what we mean when we say convey.
Yeah.
Shall we read the drafted articles so that we understand what we're
That would be
discussing here? I think we should lay that out here while we're talking,
Okay with that? Yeah, okay.
rather than after.
Sure.
Are there a couple copies anyway?
Yeah.
Hey, could this be sent to the printer, what we're looking at here, the language here, so they can read it? Everybody has their time here, we should make use of it. Or we can share.
Maybe you could share this way, Brandon.
Yeah.
I would appreciate a copy as well, if it's possible.
That might help.
Okay.
That's okay, I think I might be able to do this.
Everyone's good?
Yeah.
The old primary building, to see if the town will vote to transfer the care, custody, and control of the land and/or buildings known as the old primary school, located at 30 School Street, shown on an assessor's map, 71, Lot 76, from the Board of Selectmen for general purposes to the Board of Selectmen for general purposes and for the purpose of conveyance, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to convey a simple fee interest or any portion thereon, or to lease the property on such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen deem in the best interest of the town, and to execute any and all agreements and documents to effectuate said sale or lease of any of the properties and any portion thereof, and to authorize and or reauthorize the Board of Selectmen to sell and or lease the parcel and or building situated thereon, and or subdivide in any manner said parcels and or buildings situated, and or take any legal action necessary to effectuate the sale, lease, subdivision, and or transfer of said land and buildings situated thereon.
So I stand corrected, that sounds like sale or lease.
That's everything.
Yeah, right.
That's the old catch-all, so.
Anything we want to do.
Thanks.
And then the Brooks is very similar?
The Brooks is the exact same language. I did, for discussion purposes, add the same article that was last town meeting in the event that, to provide an option for the Brooks House. If the town did not want to sell or lease the building and land, to just sell the building and retain ownership of the land.
Okay.
But that wasn't given for primary, just Brooks?
That's just Brooks.
And that was part of the discussion, you know, the preference of APDC was leave it where it is because that's part of its historic value. But it would be acceptable to them to preserve the building, to allow it to be moved to another property. And, you know, the Jones House is the one that, because that's more like a residential than the other. The Jones House was used as the example when they brought it up. So just to kind of finish my kind of introduction, these various groups that we've asked to join us, what we're hoping for tonight is primarily just a brainstorming, and whether your interests are predominantly in the land or the green space, or whether they're interested in, you know, the buildings themselves, you know, all of this is fair game to discuss. I personally believe that the 8.5 acre parcel that the Passios and Brooks stand on now are part of the discussion, so that, you know, I, in my mind, think that there are at least green space possibilities on that parcel, even if we make it a municipal building. I think that, you know, it could be rearranged in terms of parking, and, you know, there's no reason the gazebo couldn't be there if we chose for it to be there, because there's been input on traffic issues and things like that. There's other possibilities. And what we're hoping in some of these workshops is just to brainstorm a little bit, and to make sure that these various groups feel that they have an avenue to be part of this process, and it doesn't have to end tonight. You know, if there's some real interest, you know, we'd either welcome your input now and in several other places, or welcome you to join the effort as we move forward.
Great.
Okay. So other than that, there really isn't an agenda. So in other words, we wanted to workshop this. We wanted to say that the plan of record today is to put a couple articles on the warrant. We're still marching forward with the feeling of the current Board of Selectmen is that the municipal office space needs of the town cannot be achieved in their current configuration. The best option available to us is the Passios. In the course of using the Passios, there are some recreational spaces in the Passios that there's no reason not to utilize them for the community. And the fact that it sits on an 8 acre parcel, there's other opportunities that we should, you know, kind of be considering as we're going through this process. And then with regard to the other 4 properties, you know, predominantly the primary and the Brooks, but it's all fair game. So.
I have some thoughts that I could start with.
Great.
Makes sense. You know, from the open space plan perspective, you know, the town center was clearly a resource that people use, particularly for walking, you know, sidewalk walking, and sort of that sort of lower impact kind of recreation. People can walk out their front doors. It's a population center and have a good long walk, generally free from traffic. Once you get off the main streets and get into the school campus in there's lots of walking that then connects you out to Oak Ave and in other places. There was interest in reconnecting Town Center to Marshall Park. We've got the connection now down Mass Ave, but, having, the connection out via Oak and Highland are, a great opportunity for connecting our recreational spaces as people use them passively. So anything that would reduce that, I think, would be a reduction in what we have for recreational opportunities now in town. So those connections, I think, are really important. I think, my own personal opinion is anything we did to reduce the town's ownership that in anything that adjoins the school campus would be horribly short-sighted. Because eventually we're going to need that space for something. And if we sell it, we're never going to get it back. It's going to be very difficult to get it back. So I feel very strongly about particularly the Brooks House and the TCP that we need to keep that in the town's portfolio of ownership one way or the other. If it didn't make sense
You mean the house or the land?
I mean the property. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the buildings. I've often said to others is that, if the best thing that made sense is to raise TCP and just make it grass, fine. As long as we maintain ownership of it and we can decide what we're going to do with it somewhere down the road. But if there's a good municipal use for those buildings, I say we should use it. Mothballing it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. I feel the same way about the gymnasium and the TCP. As somebody with a child in youth basketball, we are begging for practice space. And boy, there's a gym sitting there that we should have access to and be able to use. That'd be great. So those buildings and that land in particular, I feel pretty strongly needs to stay in our ownership. Now, whether, like you said, if we lease the Brooks House or we lease portions of TCP or we sell the Brooks House, the physical structure itself, and have that moved off the property, it doesn't bother me much. For the primary school building, I feel quite differently about. That's not as connected to the other resources in the center of town. It's sort of set back. The one thing that I do have concern about is the farmer's market and its location where it currently sits. Now, could we provide additional space in the area where TCP is and in that campus area for that use? Possibly. But I don't want to forget that the farmer's market is an important component of that parcel. And so, those are the things that come to mind immediately for me in terms of our needs. The primary school parcel, former high school parcel? Yes. We had this conversation. Rich reminded us that was actually it was a high school at one point. I don't know, Karen, if there's any space for rectangular fields there, if that would make sense for you, if that's something that you have in your mind. Rectangular field space from the recreation, from the Parks Commission for recreational purposes came through our planning process as well as an important need. And finding places for, additional field space is hard to come by. So I don't know if you wanted to speak to that at all. Or not.
It's without a master plan, so to speak, for parks, it's hard to say exactly what direction we want to go in. After our meeting last week, our opinion is it's prime location land. It's, if there was no building there, it would be a perfect location for a field. It would be a perfect location for just a general park, something that we really don't have in this town, someplace where there's some trees in the middle of it that you can go and sit and read a book or, play Frisbee with your kids or whatever it may be. So from that standpoint, the location of it is prime.
Yeah.
What is it, when you say the location of it?
It meaning the land.
But which
the primary, the old primary.
Okay.
Yep.
I think it's too set back.
No, because I think that, I think the building being where it is doesn't help you see what's there. I think if that building wasn't there, you'd be able to see further than you think you can, just in terms of area.
It's pretty far back off the road.
I actually love how far back it is from the road.
I think that's not safe.
For a field?
I think that's excellent for a field.
Absolutely, for a field, for a if we were talking recreational, like a rectangular field, it would absolutely be a great location for it, because then you don't have balls coming in. It's,
No, but I thought you were talking about a park.
But for a general park, I could see a general park there as well. But that's me. I mean, everybody's going to have a different opinion on that.
I feel like parks are generally, they have streets on all sides, so that, like Boston Common, and, they're not hidden away. I don't see it as a park.
I guess it depends on what you're looking for in your park. There are certain parks that I would love to have cars nearby, but when there are small children running around, kicking a ball, potentially running after it, I don't want them to be that close to the road. But I don't know if that's what we want to do for the primary either. I certainly agree that around TC Passios and Brooks House, that's where most people go already. And from our plan, which Brandon already mentioned, people really like the passive recreation, being able to walk around. The number one thing on all those surveys were that we need more sidewalks and more connectivity and more ability to use what we already have. So when I look at the plan, I don't know, am I a citizen or an open space representative right now? I can't figure it out. But when I look at the plan, I think we have a lot of things in this town that we don't use. Marshall Park, I remember being a new resident here 6 years ago, driving in going, what happened here? I don't necessarily want us to overextend ourselves into having numerous additional responsibilities. I think we need to use what we have way better than we already do. I don't know what the best way to do that is, but I certainly think keeping our center, Passios, as part of what the town owns, and I'm not talking necessarily the building, but the space. I would hate to see that go somewhere else. Same thing with the Brooks space. And I don't know about all that other space. I don't know if we need it or not, but I'm not a town planner either. Those are just the main results from that survey of everybody in town that cared to respond, which was what, 319?
300 and something, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot. My fingers
A
are
lot.
tired.
Yeah.
To me, there's more debate probably around the primary school. I think my assumption is that that's where you're going to see the most debate in terms of what the future ought to look like there and what the town ought to do with that piece. Whereas it seems pretty clear to me what the need is for, what's adjoining the town, the school campus and the main, town buildings.
I mean, I think ideally we'd want to keep everything, but we can't.
Yeah.
Or we can.
Can.
Because there's
What can we afford?
So, just to put a little history on, this feels extremely loud, on the topic of conveyance of these parcels, there was an article for special town meeting November 2016 where 5 sites were put into one conveyance article. And that did not pass, and it was amended, but conveyance was not a part of it. They put some things out for RFP, but not including conveyance. So that failed, and then conveyance came back in May 2017 as 5 individual conveyance articles, and I think we passed over some of them because when we first got going, they were failing. And so, as a citizen, I became an advocate for putting on the brakes and really becoming highly concerned about the land, and having grown up here and come back here, seeing land deteriorate, like where the new library is used to be more sports fields. And just sort of generally, so where we used to do band concerts and the bonfire is now a parking lot. sort of paving paradise and putting up parking lots to the point that I'm like, where are we going to host like our 300th birthday? Where is that big parcel of land that's nondescript, not a sports field? And that's when I started advocating for something like an improved town green at Old Primary as an option. But then after the Architectural Preservation District, the Historical Commission, a lot of people start talking about the building. Well, I always like to pivot and be my own devil's advocate and say, if we're preparing to spend millions, over $10 million on the TC Passios building as a town hall, and 55,000 square feet far exceeds what most towns our size would take on in terms of long-term maintenance and utility costs, it's going to be enormous. I started to always start to see a school campus versus a municipal campus. And that doesn't mean it's, I'm locked and loaded on a certain mindset, but TC Passios is in the school campus, whether it's a building or whether it's a field. Maybe baseball diamonds would be amazing to bring that right onto the school campus. But I see that as school campus, and I'm big into student safety and security in a restrictive environment, and keeping the school campus its own space where a lot of children walk from the middle school to the Boys and Girls Club and to the library, and not wanting to put town hall in the middle school campus. So then I see the center of town as our municipal campus. And then that's where that site comes in, where you have the Ritter Building, you have the Historical Society, and you have all this land that could be parking and or green space, whether the building's there or not. So if the building's not there, I see a town green. If the building is there, if we truly need more square footage, sometimes there's been discussion, could that be town hall? And it's been studied, where you'd have a addition put on the right-hand side as like a lobby. So since it's a split-level building, you would deal with ADA compliance through an addition off to the right-hand side of it as a modern entry. And then you could have public bathrooms in this entry. Now, if you have this municipal campus and you're trying to do events, you've even added public restrooms that could be sealed off from town hall, just unlock and open up bathrooms. So I like to just, okay, if we're keeping the building, how could it potentially be useful? I don't think we're at the point, we talk about having a comprehensive plan in terms of moving forward with these buildings. Well, when you start brainstorming and you think, well, what if that was town hall? Or what if, because there's beautiful land behind it and around it, you could have a gazebo and you could have a municipal campus over there.
Beautiful land
We
where?
Old Primary. We never cleaned up the site of taking down public safety building. It's a dirt patch. But if you really look at the land there and had an engineer come and add parking to the Ritter and a sidewalk from the Ritter to Old Primary, if we're going to invest 10 plus million in TCP, what does it look like to put 10 million back into the old high school? And so it's just, I don't have a set.
See, what I'm trying to get away from myself mentally is trying to picture what it has to be kind of permanently in the future, because what's true about our town center is it's never been the same. Every generation has seen it differently. What was TCP is not TCP anymore, and what was the high school was then the primary school, and this was they played gym in this room. They played basketball in this room.
There's an idea.
So I mean, there's a lot of history of how town center has been used, and so maybe the answer is short term. Town offices do move into TCP. Maybe long term, that building gets raised and it becomes the new middle school when that has to be built, or the new Turkey Hill, or whatever. So and maybe that the town offices end up being like you described. But that's it's an iterative process, and it's never at the end stage. So what we as stewards of this land and of these resources what I try to think of is the land base itself. The housing development that was built across the street from Turkey Hill, on Oak Ave and Northfield there. I feel like we lost an opportunity there because of it's large, flat, developable, and located right adjoining our school campus. Now it's housing. We're never going to get that back. So what we have for resources now, however we choose to use it now or in the future, is important to have. And I swear generations from now will thank us if we don't divest of that, because we're going to need it for one reason or the other. So we don't have to solve all the problems right now. Again, if we simply raised it and made it grass, or let it grow back up into trees, fine, we still have it for that resource. So, and I feel, like I said, I feel very strongly about what's over here. I feel I'm on the fence about the primary school location myself personally. But
I think part of the reason we've had so many iterations is that it's a fiscally conservative community and we want to get a lot of bang for our buck. How can we make it work? You know, what is the lowest cost to get it to have a functioning community? You know, the way they moved this building, raised it up, put something underneath it. You know, they weren't trying to build the Taj Mahal. They were trying to be very practical. But how can we best use our resources?
right.
Well, I think
Disagree.
one of the useful things that we have now is an open space plan, where if it's decided by the town that that's something that we'd like to do, we could apply for grants. So we have that some of that taken off. I think the match is, what, 50% now?
Depends on what grant program.
Depends on what grant program.
62, up to 62 for some of them.
This help with demolition and the creating of a?
It depends on which thing you apply for, but having that in action is very helpful for balancing budgets. And when I said that I'm not sure we can do everything that we want to do, when I mentioned the things that were important, it wasn't that I don't think we can't have a municipal campus and additional parks. I just think that I'm listening to our budget this year, and my daughter is in that class in kindergarten. That's personal, right? And I see that we are now talking about cutting positions in the high school to balance the budget. I don't necessarily think that it's a good time to be buying additional or necessarily selling off land or putting up new buildings or taking down buildings when we can't take care of what we currently have. So anything that we propose and do for open space concerns, which we've laid out, should go through a series of steps that we've laid out. And I don't actually know how that impacts the building plans, because I don't think that's something we actually reviewed in the open space plan, except other than that's prime space that everybody uses.
Yeah, for the reasons we outlined in the beginning there.
Can I make a note on this too, Jamie? Just this is more of a community comment, I guess, citizen comment. The primary school lands, the TC Passios land, the Brooks land, that is, to me, is huge. It's land that we shouldn't give away, and here's one example of why. When the new high school was built, one of the things that they did not build was a baseball field. Because they didn't build a baseball field, because they don't have their own baseball field, it's now they continue to use Marshall Park. Parks has no intentions of taking that away from them. But it's tied our hands. They are the only users of that field. We have the Lunenburg Phillies. They would find someplace else to go if they needed to. They've had to do it in the past when we've had to close that field temporarily. When I think of that, and I think of other things that the greater piece of the community, percentage of the community needs and wants from town, I think, well, that would be a great area for a general park or a rectangular field for 300 or 400 kids versus 30 kids. They could move. They could easily put in a baseball field on one of these pieces of property if it was still available to them. So I would hate to see, I'm an advocate for not getting rid of the land. I don't think any of our land should be sold, even if it's the primary school land, because they could put a baseball field over there if they really absolutely needed to.
Are there any other parcels of open space that a baseball field could go on that we currently have in inventory?
So funny that you asked that, Phyllis. So there's actually, there is a piece of land that came to my attention during open space. It's a 6-acre piece of land off of Mass Ave, but because the front piece of land was sold at auction, I now believe it's landlocked, and we can't access it. That used to belong to the town. It used to belong to the school. It's where their
Septic fields.
leach field septic system was. And it seems crazy that it's all the way down there, but that's where it is. It's all the way down there. that could have been used for them. But now, because I believe it's landlocked, and I haven't been able to clarify that, I mean, it's just me, my inexperienced eye looking at a map, I don't believe there's access to it. I don't think we can get to it. I think the town now owns 6 acres of land that we have no access to.
But maybe the town could purchase access.
I don't know, we sold it in 2017. We sold our access in 2017
And
at
if we're
auction.
talking about conveying land, it's also funny to combine that with land purchasing, sort of opposites.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is one of the things that we identified in the plan is there is a sort of a smorgasbord of generally held municipal lands throughout the town that were acquired for one reason or another, or just via tax title and that kind of thing. We're having a very sort of thoughtful way of going through each of those parcels and looking at them as an opportunity for either, maybe it needs to be dedicated for conservation, maybe it needs to be dedicated for parks. Maybe it would make perfect sense to auction it off and sell it off and get it back on the tax rolls. There may be, but having a real sort of thoughtful look at each of those. So similar to the process you're doing now for
Right.
this, I think that's great.
I think it's important to keep in mind that the project started with a name called reuse. It wasn't sale, it wasn't, the thought was that we're building a new high school, is that, and we still have the old high school or middle school or whatever. We have the patios, we have this piece of land, that piece of land. One of the things I'm hoping by working with various committees, and I'm really impressed, I was impressed when I saw the work of open space, because I think it's the kind of long-range planning that we need to do, is looking for visionaries with a passion on how to reuse it within the confines of our fiscal possibilities. I mean, and that is clearly, that's where you always run into, gee, if we tore that down for a mere $1 million, we'd have rubble. Then we'd build it up for a mere $1 million and we'd have a beautiful place. Well, we're not Weston, so we got to do it a little different.
Yep.
But I believe we should be talking, I don't think the first option should be to sell anything, especially things that are in a center of town. Now, I contend that the center of town has slowly evolved from the intersection of Main and 2A to the high school campus, if you count patios and everything else. Because you have your library there, you have your senior center there, you have your the Boys and Girls Club. It's kind of over there. And I personally, some folks aren't going to like this, the Brooks House is kind of in the way. I see that whole piece of property as something that could be a municipal plaza that includes our municipal offices, our schools, our Boys and Girls Club, our library, and a place to throw a frisbee and sit under a tree and read a book. It doesn't solve our baseball field or our square field. That's something different. But I don't think we should go into this with an objective that it has to solve one need, especially if it hurts the possibilities on the other needs. And it's been a real struggle. I mean, I think I've been with building reuse from the beginning of its iteration, and I'm sure it's been done before. I know when they built the public safety building and they redid they had the same kind of issues, and that went before town meeting 5 or 6 times too before it got anywhere. But I guess one of the mistakes I made is I tried to solve all 5 problems at once. I tried to say, we originally thought the town hall was the best place to put the town hall. What do we have to do to make this work? And the TAP study told us that wasn't going to work with any kind of, even putting money in it, it wasn't going to be big enough. And then we looked at putting a wing on the Ritter, and that was going to be more expensive and a little better, but it still wasn't going to solve our need. We came around to the patios and it said, well, at least that'd solve our municipal needs, and it might even give us a gym and a cafeteria to boot. All right. And then I said, okay, so the only way we're going to be able to sell this to town is to the town meeting, is to be able to tell them, and here's what we're going to do with the other 4. And that's impossible. That's why I'm still here. and still beating this drum,
Yeah.
you know. But I think that people with a passion have to say, I got a great idea for the use of this, or I got a great idea, and eventually it'll all come together. I agree with you. I think that the farmer's market is something that the town has grown to really, really appreciate. Doesn't have to be on the one of the Ritter.
Right.
Could be a lot of places. Could be indoors. Could be indoors and outdoors. You know, but you need somebody with a passion that wants to take that and drive that as hard as they can. If we need fields, I agree. I think there's a lot of green space on the high school campus. Now, maybe they're using it all.
I think they are from.
But I drive past, there's a lot of green
I know.
space that isn't used 24/7. You know, maybe it's just the scheduling discussion. I don't know. Maybe you could put a baseball field and a football field in the same place.
Yeah, I wish you could.
Well, maybe you can.
They play football at Fenway Park.
They do, but they also have professional grounds people that like come in and cover the, what they call the skin, and so that you've got a usable field. It's part of the problem, Jamie, you're right, you do drive by the high school and you see a whole bunch of green space, is that because sports, the usage of the fields don't overlap in an easy fashion, in the fall, those fields are packed. You're begging to get on them, and then you hit a lull in the spring when it's, their outdoor fields, their outdoor sports are, mainly lacrosse. So you have more open space, and it's just, I've had these conversations for a couple of years now, and I don't know what the ultimate solution will be. I mean, I think that it's great that, they're finally, the needs of different groups are getting out there, and, we're.
And I think that's why we invited parks. I think that's why we invited conservation. We have a lot of discussion around ecotourism and trails, and that's a different form of recreation, either passive or active, that the town is very proud of. I think all these groups can work together, and I think the best example I've seen so far is open space. I mean, I do think that you're at a strategic planning level, and some of us are at a how do we get through the next town meeting.
And town center is really for the townspeople, ultimately. And so how we design that, the one thing I'm worried about is that, we'll keep kicking the can down the road, and things will only get worse at the primary school, high school, et cetera. So that's my biggest concern, is that we're going to get to a point there where, and maybe we're almost there, where we have to make a decision, and it's going to be very costly, and our hands are going to be tied. And so deciding before we get to that point is probably the most fiscally responsible thing we can do. It may be $1 million to demo it. It feels like a lot.
I think it was about 500,000 or so. It was less than $1 million for sure.
Whatever it is, it's going to feel like a lot just to put a building in several dumpsters and take it away. But I promise you, if we ever need to find space in town at some future point, it's going to cost us many times exponentially more than that to replace it. So it's a simple investment in stewarding a capital investment. Land as a capital resource that this town owns is incredibly valuable. So spending some money to take care of that, like any capital investment that we have in our plan, whether it's a fire truck or a building, the land itself is an important capital investment that we have to maintain. And so maintaining that for future generations is incredibly important. So that's really my bottom line on all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about that primary school, if it could actually be demoed with the AP restrictions on it.
Well, right now, they're saying no, but I mean, I think that everything, we couldn't do anything on this topic without the town approving the village district and the APDC, because they felt, and I agree with them, that they wanted to protect the center of town as a very key asset. And so they put two bodies in place, under the jurisdiction of the planning board through the village district and the APDC. And we're now having them do their job. And they came forward and said they believe that the primary school's facade, at the very least, was important enough that they don't want to see us let it be neglected any further. All right. And if we were to convey it, whether that be lease, rent, or use it ourselves for some group in town that may or may not be totally town municipal, but it could be, Boy Scouts or Boys and Girls or whatever, I think that the restrictions would require, at least today, that they maintain
The facade.
the historical value, however that's defined.
Yeah.
Now, what's the appeal process for that, and what say does the town have? I don't know, but I think somebody would have to have a hot prospect to test that, frankly.
And my biggest concern with that concept is they can clearly say, we don't want the town to demo it, but in time, the members could change, things could change, a developer could have the land, and you see people chip away at these kind of things, and permission could be given to demo it at some point. It was in August 2016 that there was a workshop on this topic. And at that workshop, Selectman McQuaid gave a slide presentation, and it had a potential development project on that site that had 40-plus apartments and retail, and lo and behold, that building was not on it anymore in those drawings. And so some of these concepts of that building being gone go back a couple years, and they exist. And so a small appointed committee of APDC could say, we absolutely are keeping that building, but fluid over time as the members change and we let the land go. Well, we might think we're giving the land away so somebody's going to save that building, but we really can't guarantee it once it's not our land.
Right.
And a developer is going to really work very hard to prove that it needs to be demolished, or they're going to have lawsuits and land use attorneys and different things, and what they're going to want to see there is what's going to go there. And so the only way, in my mind, to protect the building is to say, could it be our town hall, or could we lease it? Once we give it away, the APDC now could say, this building's going to be here forever. Then there's how many members are in that appointed group? 5. New 5 people are there. 3 years go by, developer has the land, and they're going to, they could vote to let it go. And so we can hypothesize that we're going to have a good outcome, but once we give away the land, the outcome is really no longer ours. And then,
It is a body that the town empowered to do that job.
but everything I said is just a truth of
No, it's a speculation.
Well, everything changes, right? I mean,
Yes.
so, we say it all the time, and that this is the way it is now, and everybody can sit here and say, we're not gonna do that, we're gonna do this, and this will never happen, and then the board changes, and things change, and once you let something go, and it's in the hands of somebody else, and a board changes, they can absolutely change their mind. So if the goal is to keep a town center, if the goal is because somebody, we're gonna sell this because this group promises to keep this building here, I don't think we can live or die by that. I think things change down the road, and it is what it is. You're right, the APDC is a board in town that's been put there to do a specific job, and the job that they're doing now may not be the exact same way they're doing it 5 years from now. So I don't know what the ultimate solution is for any of this. I just know that we have land. My personal opinion is every piece of land that this town owns in this town center, I consider prime land of great importance, because once it is gone and something else is built there, houses, a business, it's going to be extremely difficult to get back. And will 10 years from now we look back and say, well, we should have? Why would we ever want to put ourselves in that position? If it's ours now, let's not give it away. Let's not sell it. Let's keep the land for our use. And if it costs us a little bit of money, and I'm probably one of the more fiscally conservative people up here, then so be it. We'll never get the opportunity to own these pieces of land again if we sell them.
Convincing the body politic at town halls where the rubber meets the road, right?
Town meeting?
Town meeting, excuse me, is the hardest part of that. And and there's going to be a lot of people that come to those meetings, as they have year after year after year when these things have come up, that don't want to spend the money to make that investment, and therefore it just sits there and continues to deteriorate. So, so I feel your plight.
Yeah, and I think, I don't think anybody disagrees that a valuable asset like the land, once sold, is lost. I think the problem is that we currently have 5 pieces of valuable assets that are not being utilized to their fullest. They're not meeting the needs of our municipal office requirements, and there's one plan on the table that we're trying to advance.
Yep.
If another plan replaces that plan, fine, but it's got to come with costs, it's got to come with how does it meet the needs, what problem does it solve, and the town has to vote for it.
Yep.
And that's what we're trying to work.
Well, to me, and the easiest thing in my mind to solve is getting the municipal offices into TCP as the reasonable first step to take, because it's available space. I think it's easier to sell, remodel, and reuse than it is to raise and restart.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the Vertex trials that were done on the buildings in terms of what costs they need. And they looked at the 5 buildings, and then they added on Turkey Hill too, which is an important building to be aware of its needs. And the building that actually did the best through the Vertex, which was to study the building itself, was the town hall.
Mrs. Adams, please.
Just complete
please.
my
We
train of thought.
we had this discussion last week.
But
I'm sorry.
You made a motion. I couldn't speak. Yes. I just want to finish my thoughts on the Vertex trials and the buildings. There's a significant cost associated with the TC Passios building because each and every single doorway is not ADA compliant. And when the school was studying to keep it a school, it needed over $10 million of repair. It has a lot of asbestos, even in its window caulking. So that is one of our most expensive projects we'd be looking at. And when you looked at the immediate needs, TC Passios was given $2 million worth of immediate needs, which were complete failures or safety items.
The Vertex study is immaterial to what we're talking about.
And, well, I guess what I'm getting at...
And we agreed last week that we were not going to do this, especially with guests here to talk about an alternative.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm worried about vacating Town Hall and the Ritter and what's going to become of these historic buildings. And I think the most fiscally responsible thing to do is to continue to use the buildings we're using, but enhance them, like add a true elevator to Town Hall.
So I don't want to get in the middle of all this. I can think of a number of examples where the town of Berlin, for instance, moved their town offices temporarily into old school space so that they could renovate their town office, their historic town hall in a historic manner, and move back in. The town of East Brookfield has all of their municipal space located in old.
It's in an old school.
So there's so many examples of municipalities that have done that and have done it well. And I'm sure these are structures that are all built in the same time period, and they've moved, in the last decade into those spaces. It has to be possible to do it in a way that's feasible and fiscally responsible. And so I don't know all the details of all the studies. There's too many examples of places in Massachusetts where it's happened to think that we couldn't do something similar, even if it's on a temporary basis, so that we then, we're not trying to renovate while we're living here, is you're able to move into some space, or, so like we said, is that it's an iterative process, that we don't have to solve all the problems with each individual piece. You can't. Yeah, it would break the bank.
When my daughter and I were in buggy stage, I couldn't get into this building. I could get into Passios to vote. It is a lot easier to get into, even with those issues identified in that report, than this building.
Oh, and I asked when we were doing grants if we could redo the front doors with push-button doors, because I think there's, I mean, even as this building exists, there's things that should be done to it. And we didn't do that. It was just like, everybody just
That's,
gave me a blank stare.
The state as well, because this is on the National Register Historic District, so things like that, the doors would have to get approval. But we are focusing on other things that to make it accessible. The construction of the ADA accessible bathroom, the project for the handicap ramp is on our list of things to do. But that would also require improvements to the sidewalk because it doesn't align with the ramp. So it's not
And with the TCP Town Hall, I've been highly worried about traffic because the Oak Ave to Mass Ave entrance to the new middle high school is not a road that's considered driveway. So the only true road to get to TCP would be considered Memorial Drive, which you have the Boys and Girls Club, playground, the library, the back end of the library park. And so there's a lot of questions I bring up, just things like feasibility studies that should be done before a plan like this, because I worry about unintended consequences and a lot of things. And so now all the people who are going for building permits, and you're bringing the general public into the school campus, and you're bringing general traffic into the school campus. And I just feel like that type of activity exists out here in this municipal space, and where we just built a $72 million school, we're going to be bringing traffic, people, general public into school campus, where I would so prefer a baseball diamond.
Again, has this issue been brought up with the school committee?
Yes,
Yes.
they're fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I really want to take advantage of you being with us, and I also want to invite you to continue to be with us, because I think that as we go forward, I think we all have come to the realization that this isn't solve the whole problem in one great idea. You know, it will evolve. We'll have 2 steps forward and half a step back, hopefully, if we're doing good. But I appreciate you being here, and for Karen, is there anything you think we should be doing in the short term to assist your mission? And I would have asked this to the Conservation and Parks as well, relative to, you know, is there an opportunity here that we definitely don't want to miss short term?
Well, I think, you know, to bring it back to where we began, is really the connectivity of and the value of town center as an open space resource that townspeople use, whether it's passively through the sidewalks and walking, whether it's actively with the recreation fields that we have and in the gym spaces that are available, that it's an important resource for the town. So making sure that the town maintains a level of care and control and custody over those items is important.
Great.
So that's for that immediate thing, but then the other thing that was in our open space plan was trying to come up with a way to review and look over parcels that come up for auction, so that we don't have the unfortunate situation of access to 6 acres being sold off without review from planning and all of the stakeholders that were identified in the report. That would be huge, and I don't know if that comes up annually or...
Well, I think when you brought it up relative to a very specific item, we agreed wholeheartedly, and I'd like to work together with you to figure out how to get in front of that, whether it's a review of all the chapter land or a review of all the land. I mean, you know, and to kind of have a short list of, gee, if that ever became available, or maybe we ought to try to make it become available, you know.
Yeah, because in addition to preserving that center, we have lots of developments around town that we've identified that would be very good for people to be able to access recreation or parks. And if we do that, then we're actually being really good stewards of what we have and using the money wisely, right?
Well, I definitely think those parcels should be identified, and we should sort of have a plan. Okay, if something becomes available, what are the steps 1 through 5? What do we have? How fast do we have to act? And because the municipal ways, pretty slow sometimes, and.
I think we've learned,
Miss opportunities.
besides lobbying the legislature to change the rules a little bit, I think we've learned that it's, once it becomes right of first refusal, the clock's pretty short. So we want to be way in front of that in terms of knowing a piece of property and maybe even being the one that makes the offer.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if, you know.
Well, like we talked about with the 994 piece,
Right.
is, there's an opportunity there when they come in seeking those kinds of approvals, is to, before we start too far down a road of permitting, let's have some conversations about whether or not they are priorities. And that way, hopefully, if we choose it's not, then smooth sailing for them on the backside, rather than make all that investment and then be stuck there holding the bag.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a huge risk here. I see that there's some people in the audience, and I don't know if any people came specifically to talk about this, but I'm going to ask if anybody would like to join us. Paula, why don't you grab a mic?
Thank you. I just want to comment on the discussion. Obviously, I was on the board when all of this was happening. I've worked with Brandon on acquisition of the Lane property. Open space is very important to me, as is recreation, as is accessibility. Having a father who lost a leg, I understand how important accessibility is. I just want to put in my 2 cents. I gave a presentation to the Board of Selectmen. I firmly stand behind that presentation. I believe that retaining the property of the Brooks House, not necessarily the building of TCP, moving municipal office spaces over there right now, knowing that eventually we may have to change that plan. But making it, if we raise the Brooks House or relocate it, make that area a park and green space. I would agree with the chairman of the Board of Selectmen that our municipal center has shifted. I think that I spend a lot of time at the Kids Kingdom. I used to spend a lot of time with my dad at the senior center and at the library. And that space is incredibly walkable with the sidewalk, with the access to TCP. I think we have an opportunity there to put a park, and I did a slideshow presentation showing that green space, because if you look from Mass Ave to TCP, you can realign that pavement, remove all that pavement, make that a park adjacent to the school property. Make the TCP both a municipal center and a recreation center. I think we have an opportunity potentially for a community kitchen. We have an opportunity for makerspace. We have an opportunity to turn that into a community area. And as far as the concern about the municipal campus and school children, personally, I believe that the more generations we can get to collaborate and work together, the better off we are as a community. And if we have our seniors working with our Boys and Girls Club and with our school children, I believe we will all benefit. There already is public in that area. We have our library, we have our senior center, we have a playground. As far as the primary school, I believe that we need to retain a significant portion of that land, because I think that I personally, again, this is just my opinion, I think we can lease the Ritter space, and I would not sell it. I would lease it, potentially with a 10-year lease, with specific building envelope of what can and cannot go there, and potentially lease the backland for retail space, but keep the majority of the property in town ownership. One of the things I would love to see is the revitalization of some of our existing community space, like Marshall Park. Marshall Park needs a complete overhaul. Before we start talking about building additional parks, I would like to see us invest time and money and grants into our existing facilities. I think that the reality is we are officially financially constrained. We have to work within our existing budget, and we have to make every dollar count. And I think that having two municipal buildings in which you have to go to for various things with a handicapped individual, it is no easy feat. Just parking alone is difficult. Is extremely difficult.
Absolutely.
I have a sister who has multiple sclerosis. I had a father who was very handicapped. I understand ADA. So I think that I applaud what you're doing, and I just wanted to say I think we have an opportunity over at TCP. I think we have an opportunity to obtain the green space. I lived in Pepperell. I grew up in Pepperell. The town field was where I spent my entire summer. I worked there as an arts and craft director. I worked there. My sister worked in the sports program. I understand the need for recreational space, and I think we have an opportunity that we shouldn't miss.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I almost 98% agree with what Ms. Bertram just mentioned as her ideas for the buildings. There is one step that I think we could be doing simultaneously. It may never happen, but we could be doing it now, and a lot of the stuff that we're talking about doing for looking for options, and specifically speaking about the primary building and the Brooks House, would document that we've tried to do everything we can with these two properties, and I think we should be applying for a demolition permit right now. Get the APDC and the Historical Commission to set down what they require us to do to try to move the building, sell the building, or whatever, and go through that process. We may never take it down, but if all of what you guys just talked about tonight and what's been talked about up to now fails, what are we going to do 10 years from now?
I think that's smart.
Good recommendation.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? George?
Thank you. George Martin, 522 Burridge Street, 25-year resident. So I think there's a lot of dedicated people trying to work very hard to make the best use out of all the options that are on the table. I think in the end, it doesn't matter how many great ideas are created. If it's not packaged up correctly when it goes to the town meeting, I mean, it's going to crash. You mentioned a survey.
Yes, open space did a survey.
So I never saw that survey. How did that go out?
And everybody's tax bill.
Oh, okay. Now, I was going to actually suggest that we actually put in a postcard with a stamp with a couple of questions. Do you want to spend $10 million on new town offices? See what the voters say. If you get an overwhelmingly no, then there's a lot of resource time that could be used on something else. So that's just my feeling. And I'd highly recommend it. We got to reach out. I'm sorry, I didn't see your survey. I would have applied for it, but I really think we need to get the pulse on how this is going to get voted on, and then work from there.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Just a comment on that. Unfortunately, George, the postcards and surveys are great, but if they don't show up at town meeting, they're not the ones that count.
And we've got to do something. You know, people often say no to everything, but
So
we've
just
got to do something.
Timeline-wise, my son, who is now a freshman in college, was the last preschool class at the primary building. That's how long that building is sat empty. So it's time.
Yes.
It's time to make a plan, and the community has to come together to figure out what that plan is, because it just can't keep sitting there. There's too many uses that the
I really like
community needs.
Mr. Passios' recommendation of setting things in motion to start to understand options rather than stay stagnant on everything. Because if we look at these articles and we study the history of conveyance, and that it was voted down twice in the last 2 years. And that goes to George's point, no matter what we talk about here, if we're not talking about what people are thinking or feeling, then we're going to set ourselves up for immediate failure and sort of just reset the stagnant situation.
The process you've put in motion of bringing people together, trying to broaden the coalition,
Right.
is a smart one.
Thank you.
And I think it's the right way to try to start building some consensus and some momentum behind this, so that when town meeting does roll around.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
But do we
And
know?
I tell you, that one of the strategies, at least from my personal point of view, is to have people that are on committees and have some passion already and can help us build a plan.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, I've been to a lot of charrettes, and everybody's got a great idea, but then they go back to watching the Mod Squad, and nothing ever gets done,
I really like the idea of seeing what it would take to demo.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
smart. I think
Good.
it's really smart.
That's a great idea. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming, and an open invitation to keep working with us.
Fabulous.
Open
Come back
space is
again
adjoining at 8:44.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, we are going to stay down here so we don't have to make the PAC people go up and down.
Move again.
And we'll move on our agenda, but I want to make one point, and I didn't want to do it to take away any time from our guests. But I think I need to clear up an item. The Vertex study was a very specific study that was done to determine the expense required to bring the buildings that they studied back to use in their current usage. It was not a study to look at it for any usage other than their current usage. So when we say that the town hall was the least expensive, it was to bring the town hall back to a 6,000 square foot town hall that is inadequate for our current municipal office needs. The TAPE study was more of a visionary study at a higher level with more ballpark per square foot numbers, and between the two of them we can get some value from both. But it is misleading and disingenuous to use the Vertex numbers to begin to plan to use a building for a purpose other than what it's currently being used for. In addition, I think it's really important to say that as part of the Building Reuse Committee, we had several ideas that were floated and different things that were looked at as possibilities that included a gratis sketch, a conceptualization of what could have happened on certain properties that happened to be done by someone who is now on the Board of Selectmen. It was not a done deal. It was not done with any developers. It was not done as a subterfuge to anything. It was a conceptual picture that was helpful to the group to see what one possible thing could have been done at one potential piece of property. We also talked to people who had a vision of a village that included hotels, a village that included a municipal building that was paid for by the developer. We found out that that's not legal. Through the procurement laws, you can't kind of do it that way. They were visions that we looked at. We spent 6 years working in great detail, and someone that takes a look at it peripherally and draws conclusions and misleads the public is doing a disservice to the work that people have been done on this. And I just want to make that point because I have a tough time getting a word in edgewise sometimes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, before we move on, the Vertex studies were 80-page reports on each of the buildings, and they came and did a very professional presentation, and it was about keeping them in their current use, which is important to point out because changing use is more expensive. So in terms of whatever costs they assigned to, say, the TC Passios building, it was to keep it as a school, and they identified in the presentation it's even more money to change the use. The reports were paid for, they were important, and what they really identified with what were the maintenance and utility needs, and they've been used for some capital planning of each building. And in terms of what was the cheapest, that wasn't my point in bringing it up. My point in bringing them up was they studied, one of the things they presented on was the percent of deterioration of a building. And so they did it on a scale of 0% to 100%, 100%
I don't
being-
need a lesson on vertex, I read
I'm
it.
just, no, I'm just explaining
Yeah,
it to the
you're
public.
misexplaining it again.
No, this is exactly the Vertex study. They had 0% to 100%, and 100% was complete failure, and 0% was considered the best possible building. And so each building, separate from cost, was giving a percent. And this building was given 12%, 0 to 10% was considered good. And this building scored a 12%, and that wasn't cost-based, that was just based on maintenance and utility needs. The Ritter was the building that scored the next best on this percent scale. And so it's not really cost-based, it was more based on quality of building. And as you went down the line, of course, Old Primary scored the worst. There's a lot of data there. It's important data, and I think it's okay to quote the data. You quote TAPE, which was more conceptual. The Vertex was actually much more concrete. And in terms
For
of
use that we're not intending to do.
And in terms of the TAPE, that whole thing was based on space needs study that was seeking a certain amount of square footage that I feel was far beyond what is necessary. I compared square footage to a lot of other communities, and I bring up Fitchburg. They're seeking 20,000.
We've heard this before, Kate.
20,000.
And we've agreed that we're not going to talk about it.
They're seeking 20,000 square feet for a population that's
I'm
four
going
times
to move on
us.
to the next agenda item, Ms. Adams.
And we're seeking 50.
Ms. Adams, please.
We're
I'm going to move on to the next agenda item.
These are important cost-based, data-based items that were, you brought up the charrette. I mean, if the December 7th, 2017.
Ms. Adams, I'm going to move on.
Charrette had like 40
I'm going to
people,
move on to the next agenda item.
because we have an agenda.
That's right. Under current business, number 3 is a memo from the land use director adding a 6th ballot question to the 2009 warrant. You know, I can't win. If I go back up there, somebody doesn't like that.
It would feel like that. So in your Google Drive, I guess, you should have a very short memo. In drafting the regulatory bylaw for non-medical marijuana, the planning board has, under advice of council, added a 6th use, marijuana researcher. So to be consistent, they've requested that that be added to the list of uses that would be added to the ballot for prohibition, because they'll be placing a 6th prohibition article to go along with a consistent approach to the identified marijuana establishment list.
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, there's the prohibition articles by category,
Correct.
and then there's a regulation article that covers all of them, and that's the use table
That is
covers that. Any questions or comments?
So this is another prohibition ballot question?
Correct, and it would
Research?
yes, it would follow along with the tack that was taken on the other 5. Originally, the planning board had identified 5: marijuana cultivator, marijuana retailer, marijuana product manufacturer, marijuana testing facility, and marijuana transporter. And the board back in January voted to put those 5 prohibition articles on the ballot. So adding the 6th category to the regulation bylaw, consistency and whatnot, they've requested that the 6th prohibition article be added.
The legal requested this?
Legal requested that we add, or they suggested that marijuana researcher was a viable category of use. And it differs from testing facility because it could be somebody who can purchase, cultivate, or otherwise process marijuana for the purposes of researching. The testing facilities are functionally ISO facilities that test the marijuana that is being retailed amongst the non-medical community. So when you obtain a license from the Cannabis Control Commission to cultivate or process, you send a sample of that marijuana to the testing facility. They test it for pesticides and fungi and all sorts of other nasty things. And if you pass that test, then that product can be retailed. The researcher is different. It's more of a educational or scientific research on perhaps the effects of marijuana, the ways that you can alter or change marijuana to interact with people or illnesses or other things like that, but it's separate and distinct from a testing facility.
So why would you want to prohibit that?
I don't know that the planning board specifically wants to prohibit any or all of them, but
It's just they missed the category, basically.
It was a recommended addition of category,
Right.
and when we originally approached it, we asked that due to the lack of clarity on where the community as a group stands, or the community as a community stands, as far as whether they want to allow or disallow these uses. So I think that functionally, the planning board would agree that a marijuana testing facility probably has very little impact on the community from if someone built one tomorrow, no one would probably ever know it was there except for the people who paid attention, wouldn't necessarily have a functional impact on the community, but the approach that the planning board has taken is to offer an a la carte prohibition option, so that if there is a large sect of the electorate that wishes to prohibit any or all portions, they can concentrate that on that specific use and not necessarily prohibit the other uses that may have ancillary beneficial impacts on the community. So putting a omnibus prohibition on may cause some people to vote to prohibit all or vote to prohibit none, whereas this would give a more clear picture on what the community is willing or desires to take.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we add the sixth ballot question to the May 2019 annual town election on prohibition of marijuana researchers.
Yes, I'll second it for the purpose of discussion, but
Is there any discussion?
yeah, I think it's ridiculous.
Right. I think that the strategy of the planning board is to take all the different marijuana zoning possibilities and give the town the ability to prohibit any one individually or all or separate, and then just one. And so this is just to add that in. And if you disagree, you would probably disagree with the first 5 or 6 or whatever it is. So there's just one more.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Yes.
Okay, 2-1.
Thank you.
You want to stay and do the other one while you're here?
The other one.
Yeah, it's over on,
Surprise!
no, it's the impose an excise tax on the resale sale.
sure.
Is that yours?
Yeah, I mean,
Or
I
not.
think it's yours.
Okay.
I can certainly sit here and talk to you about it.
Okay, or is this yours?
I brought it forth.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
But the
the
land use director and I did talk about it, about the timing wise, because there's a 30-day window after the vote is taken that the tax can be assessed. So given the timeline of the annual town meeting and the prohibition articles, and also if the regulations did pass and we did have an application after the moratorium ended for retail, then we would have something in place if the town chose for a local option excise tax.
And if a retailer never came, it doesn't harm us to have it on the books. And this is just on the retail sale, so this wouldn't impact any other marijuana establishment other than retailers.
So we have blank percent. Is there a recommendation?
It's up to 3%. That's the maximum we could assess. So that would be it.
Are we now this is gonna be a warrant article or an election?
A warrant article.
Okay. So this one doesn't require a ballot. It's
Correct.
a warrant.
This is just a general
Just-
bylaw.
Do we have a recommendation what the percent is? I mean, I would say 3.
I would say 3.
I think
Yeah.
most communities have said 3.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's balked at any of them.
And where does the revenue end up?
The general fund.
In the general fund?
So it's
So it can be
similar-
used for anything?
Yep, it's
Yes.
similar to the hotel and meals tax. So as with that, the state collects and it shows up on the cherry sheet or
As a, yes.
unrestricted revenue.
Yeah.
Heather, do we require a motion to create this article?
It doesn't hurt. So yes,
Yeah.
because eventually you'll be voting on it as part of the warrant
Then I would make a motion that we add to our warrant, the article here, the local option of an excise on retail marijuana sales to see if the town will vote to accept general law, C-64N 3 to impose an excise on retail sales of marijuana for adult use at the rate of 3% of the total sales price received by marijuana retailers as a consideration of the sale of marijuana or marijuana products, or take any other action relative thereto.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
We skipped over the town manager report. Want to do that?
Sure. Okay. So an update on town facilities. The superintendent and I met to discuss possible uses of 4 classrooms at TCP for the extended day and early childhood learning programs, and how this would also provide a supplemental funding resource for the operational costs of that building. One of the classrooms would be used during the day for the preschool program, which is currently housed at the primary, and all 4 classrooms would be used for the before and after school program. There'll be further updates as Superintendent Burnham and I continue our discussions on this transition. Last meeting, I discussed the business brochure that was done by Montechusett Regional Planning Commission that has now been uploaded to the town website in a digitized version. So you can see that under the business heading on the main menu on the home page, listed as Explore Lunenburg Brochure. Announcement, the planning board has their public hearing Monday, February 25th at 6:30 in this meeting room. And this is on the alterations to the code for non-medical marijuana uses. Town council has office hours on Monday, February 25th from 8 a.m. to noon. There are vacancies for the building commissioner and local inspector positions, and vacancies on the Agricultural Commission, Architectural Preservation District Commission, Planning Board, which the appointment is as a joint appointment at the March 5th meeting that's tentatively scheduled. We need applications, so anyone interested, please submit an application, talent bank form, to the Board of Selectmen's office. There are vacancies on the Cultural Council, the Green Communities Task Force, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Citizens Town Caucus is Monday, March 11th at 7 p.m. And that the full description of the terms and positions available are on the website as well, and have been posted on Facebook. The recycling in the contract with Casella. At the December 18th meeting, the board had authorized me to negotiate the price for recycling with the goal of not affecting the fiscal 2019 budget. Casella agreed to $50 a ton for recycling that would go into effect on July 1st, 2019. I also asked them, and it was agreed, that there would be language in the amended contract that if the market changes, as DEP is saying they believe it will over time, that it reverts back to our original terms. Town council has been asked to draft the amendment to the existing contract with these terms. Welcome. An update on the pay-as-you-throw bags. As a follow-up to the December 18th meeting, during the discussion about recycling, a question was asked about the cost of the pay-as-you-throw bags and if there would be an increase. I had stated that we would be increasing the cost of the bags as the cost of the bags from our bag vendor would be increasing, and the cost of trash disposal will be increasing up to 3% based on the consumer price index for the Boston, Brockton, Nashua area. This will be a future agenda item to announce the increase in bag fees, which will only be increased enough to offset the increase in the contract price. An update on 174 Northfield Road rear. Deborah St. Vrain, the citizen petitioner of Article 23 at the May 2018 annual town meeting, has provided materials based on a title search performed on 174 Northfield Road rear. The research indicates that 174 Northfield Road rear is owned by whomever is entitled to the assets of Hickory Hills Lake Corporation, which was involuntarily dissolved in October of 1983. These materials have been passed on to Town Council, and their office is going to review and provide a recommendation. Just an announcement about the municipal aggregation program. A mailing was sent out. So Lunenburg residents who are new in town, residents who have ended a third electricity supply contract, or have switched back to basic service, were mailed a notification letter from the town's power supply program, Colonial Power Group, to enroll them in the town's municipal aggregation program, and an opt-out card for those who do not wish to enroll. The mailing informs residents about the town's program, shows them the savings over the basic service, and allows them a 30-day opt-out period before being automatically enrolled. And a public notice about the program is on the town's website under News and Announcements. Other electricity announcements. Resident Kathy Clark passed along information about a search tool created by the Department of Public Utilities for Mass residents to search for electricity suppliers in their area. The website is energyswitchma.gov for anyone interested. And also noteworthy, Chris Clark from Nexamp confirmed that residents will be able to purchase power from their community solar project. For more information, go to nexamp.com/what-we-do/community-solar. I can put this information on the town website as well as the Facebook page, so people can get those.
Just a quick question.
Links.
What community solar project is that? Is that the one from the Northfield Road?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any cap on that in terms of?
It would be whatever the power is generated from the
Okay.
site. So that more information would be through that link.
Okay. Thank you.
Residents from a variety of communities are available to access this?
I think this would be for Lunenburg residents, for the community solar.
Yeah, the last one, Fitchburg was included as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. Well, the last one, the actual field was in Fitchburg.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this one, it's here. I don't know, I forget what we agreed to in terms of whether it was exclusive or not. Certainly, it's open to our citizens, but I'm not sure it's exclusive.
It's a good idea. People
I'm not
should
sure if it's
definitely-
exclusive, yeah.
People should definitely
Mhm.
try to take advantage of it if they haven't. It does save you money.
Mhm.
And just an announcement as well, public hearing on MBTA fare proposal is Wednesday, February 27th, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. It's at the State Transportation Building, which is in the MBTA boardroom, second floor at 10 Park Plaza in Boston. And this is about fare increases. So I welcome the public to attend. Just another quick update as well. Attended a dementia-friendly action group meeting today. We discussed a variety of trainings that will be occurring both for public safety personnel. Trainings are scheduling with, working with Unitil to go to one of their public safety meetings, which covers about 40 employees from Unitil. And discussions with the business community, as well as doing trainings with the business community about becoming dementia-friendly.
Great.
And we are planning on doing a tax bill insert flyer in June, just to promote
Dementia-friendly.
Dementia-friendly, as well as doing an event in May. May 13th, I think, was the tentative date to do a kickoff event where will be awareness about becoming a dementia-friendly community and inviting a variety of people to that.
There's a lot of excitement about that. I was at the Council on Aging meeting last week, and the Memory Cafe and the dementia-friendly community and all that stuff has an awful lot of good press, good feelings. Successful first steps. It's really doing well.
On the subject of flyers to vote the tax bills, will we be sending something else about trash? Because we're probably going to be implementing the OOP stickers by then, right?
Yeah, that's the goal, is to send, so I think we're limited to 2 tax bill inserts, so those would have to be the 2.
Great.
Because it can't go over a certain weight in postage.
And, you know, at the MMA conference, some communities were using like college students in the summer to do that OOPS survey thing. And I was thinking that was clever, you know, to get lower cost help to try to
That's
get
a good
that
idea.
done.
Yeah. I had talked to a teacher who does the community service learning program at the high school too, to see if maybe that could be a project, community service learning project, and they could do that. So that's a possibility.
Good.
We'll see.
Great.
Okay?
Yes.
Super. Okay, we're on current business down to number 4, and we want to vote to extend the closing of the annual town meeting warrant until March 25th at 4 PM. Why do we want to do that?
So we are up to 35 articles already on town meeting. There are 7 planning board, actually 8, with 6 ballot, 1 regulation, and 1 regular planning board article, right? So 8. And there'll be 3 charter review articles, all of which we are assuming will take a significant amount of time to debate and
So why?
add to the length of the
What effect does
town
that have to
meeting.
do on the closing the warrant?
So town council, who had just done this and a charter change in another community, said they had split up into.
No, but we're on 4, right? Voting to extend the closing of the
Oh, I'm sorry, we
annual
just.
warrant, right?
Sorry. I skipped ahead.
Yeah.
Well,
Let me continue.
which one do you want to do? Because
Yeah.
she's halfway down that trail. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do the extension of the keeping the warrant open, because that's a simple administrative thing, right?
So the 42nd day per our town bylaw falls on a Saturday. We're being conservative and pushing that to the Monday at 4 o'clock. That's why,
Okay.
that's
Easy.
the explanation.
So I make a motion to extend closing of the annual town meeting warrant until March 25th at 4 PM.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Now,
now, what are we doing about town meeting?
do all of these warrant articles have to be on this town meeting? Can any of them be moved to November?
All the ones that we have received have to be on town meeting, because they either relate, are typical articles that relate to the budget. Charter review says this is the town meeting that they're going to be bringing those articles forth. The marijuana, we have to vote on the recreational marijuana articles. Our moratorium expires in May. So right now, the 35 articles, we are required to, and that doesn't take into account if we receive any citizen petitions. We are required then to put those on the town meeting warrant.
And you can't postpone any of those?
No, citizen petition, no.
So what's the proposed, to have a Saturday and then a Monday evening following the Saturday?
Yes.
And then they would very specifically lay out which items would be handled at each of the
Yes.
town meetings?
So we had a preliminary meeting just to discuss the concept with the town moderator and town council. The chairman was there, myself, and the land use director. And the thought was to do a special night just for charter review. And take care of the rest of
But
our.
there's only 3 charter review articles, so if you've got 35 articles, why move
It's
just 3?
The whole charter could really be dug through for quite a while, potentially.
The expectation is that it would take
Yeah.
a long.
How many articles are on a typical town meeting?
Last town meeting was 35 as well, but we still have till March 25th where people can submit articles.
And I think it's possible that marijuana could be a really long discussion. It's possible that charter could be really long discussion. So I think it's nice to be proactive here.
I disagree. I think that we should, there were 35 articles last town meeting. We should put them on. If it runs to 2 days, it runs to 2 days. You have the high school auditorium reserved just in case. If you say, we're not going to talk about the charter on the first day, maybe some people who are just interested in the charter don't bother to attend. I think you could diminish participation as opposed to improve it. I don't see any reason to remove the charter to the second day.
I think what has happened in the past, we're trying to learn a lesson from, is we lose a quorum through part of the town meeting, and knowing that a number of these will take a significant amount of time, we're helping people to prepare and say, and plan that we will have a second night just to discuss this. And
so how does this avoid the quorum issue?
It helps
It gives
you
them a chance
prepare
to
to know
plan
you
ahead.
can be there. I know we went to maybe about 5 p.m. last year, give or take, and there was never a lunch or a break or anything. And I don't remember there being anything quite as potentially controversial as discussing, long-term marijuana bylaws and every 10-year town charter. So when I first heard this, I thought, why? And then I just thought the feasibility of getting all of this information contained in one day, being proactive and allowing everybody to know, book these 2 days, I think takes a lot of angst out of the day, getting through so much information.
Has the town done this very often in the past?
I'd have to look back to see, but I believe there's been, not while I've been here, that a town meeting has gone to a second.
Well, I know that they've gone to a second day, but planned to go to a second day, planned for several days. When I taught in Boxborough, the town meeting was in the evening, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It happened every year. It was the plan, and they did it. But I think this is not the year to change from the way it's always been done.
When does the decision need to be made by, and who takes the action on it?
It would have to be part of what we send out in the warrant, which is the end of March.
Okay.
So we don't need to decide today.
The sooner we decide.
The sooner the better.
Why? Because we would plan to build in language into the warrant to make sure.
It doesn't have to be sent out till the end of March, so you can have the language ready now, just in case.
Would we take citizen input with any historic relevance here?
Yeah, the charter, the public hearing on the charter is going to be, next Wednesday?
27th.
So we could ask for public input then.
What? Sure.
In the half century at least that I've been paying attention to town meetings, we have never done it this way. Never. And I don't believe we should do it now. I don't think there's any provisions even in the charter, Mass General laws, town bylaws to do this. Town meeting is set up with a warrant. We start at the beginning of the scheduled day for annual town meeting. We go as far as we can. The moderator decides at some point that, okay, we've gone as far as we can today, and we adjourn to a given time and date, which is usually the next Monday. If we don't finish it on Monday, we go to Tuesday. If we don't finish it on Tuesday, we go to Wednesday. That's the way it's always been done, and I think it should stay that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's not the year to change the way it's always been done.
Could we take additional input?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry.
In the
years that I've been here, and I've been here for 32 years, it hasn't been done this way. It always has been known that if it's a very lengthy warrant, that it will continue, and we have continued in the past. I don't know that it's ever gone 2 nights. I think it's just gone the 1 night, but I may be wrong.
This may be our year.
But I, personally, I think that it makes sense to just have the meeting. I think maybe you put in the warrant that in the event that we run over, it will be adjourned to this night, but I don't think you specifically say the charter is on a different night, because I think you're going to separate who comes, and I think potentially you are going to have quorum issues. So personally, I think it makes sense to reserve the date and perhaps make that known, but I would not have a separate meeting just for the charter. That's just my personal opinion.
Thank you. I'm going to make a recommendation that we table this discussion till the 5th, which is our next meeting, and make the decision on the 5th. I also think we should put on the agenda for the 5th that we're considering a bifurcated meeting with the charter on Monday night. Because I'm just looking at this and, it says we're going to go over to Monday, but it doesn't really specifically say we're going to break up the 2 things. So between the public hearing on the charter review and if we specifically say we're thinking about this and we allow public comment at our next meeting, we'll get a sense. We'll also have a full board, and we'll make that decision. I mean, if I was going to vote, I sat in on the meeting, and it was really the moderator who was driving to be able to organize this and to know what he had to deal with. And I would certainly want him to be able to weigh in on this discussion. So let's just put it on the agenda for the 5th. All right.
But, another point is that you may have more things than the charter because,
Yeah, that's true.
You may not get, so it isn't,
That's a good point. You might need the Monday night, but not just for charter.
Right.
Yeah. And let it sort of plan itself.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Well, let's come prepared to duke this out on the 5th. then. But
Okay.
let's make a decision on the 5th, because I think the more time we have to build a warrant, the better.
And, the charter review will be before that, and we'll hopefully be able to get some public input.
Okay, fair enough. Now, relative to our 3, or the 3 that we're kicking around, there was the convey articles that we went over as part of our workshop. And again, we can fine tune them as we get closer to the 5th, but is there anything we need to talk about on them tonight?
So you voted on the
Tax, marijuana
yes,
tax.
the
article.
local option tax. Do you want to take?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just looking at these
Yes.
3, though, the under number 5, A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Can we leave those to the 5th?
If you want to. Okay,
We'll have the whole board.
okay. I'm okay with that. And why don't we put the recommend, there was a couple of questions in there. Let's put the recommended language and start from there.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing to do.
All right, is it, you know what I'm saying?
No.
For these 3 articles, for the convey, let's put what we think we should be saying as opposed to leaving it open to, there was like 2 different conveys, wasn't there, a sale?
For
and
Brooks House.
For
there
Brooks.
was.
Okay, well, that's okay,
So
because
which,
that's true.
Yeah, which version?
But we have to pick one, right?
Right. Well, or you
You can
put
let them
both on the
both
warrant.
go and let town
Yeah.
meeting potentially pick.
That was what the intent was to provide 2 options. If you don't,
All right, so that makes it.
This could be another
So we're up to
option.
37 articles then, right? Or whatever. Okay, fair enough. Okay, why don't we discuss those? And then the third one is just the actual specifics about architectural and engineering services.
yeah.
So let's talk about that on our next meeting as well.
Okay.
All right. Number 6, discussion regarding the request from Senator Tran. So we requested that we were going to talk a little bit about our prioritization over and above the capital plan, I guess.
Yes. So I put together a short memo.
Okay,
on
where's
just
that?
What's it called?
Some FY20 budget priorities from TM, and it's in a folder.
Budget priorities, it's
Yep.
in the folder all
So
by itself up at
there's-
the top.
Oh.
Senator
gee.
Tran's office email in that folder, as well as
Okay, which one should I open?
From GM, because the other one's just the blah, blah.
Okay.
Oops, I gave you the wrong, that's the blah, blah.
Okay, cool. All right, so you want to walk us through this?
Sure. So I'll just read the memo I put together.
Mm-hmm.
As we're all acutely aware, there will always be an infinite list of budget priorities and a limited source of funding to cover all the town's needs. The fiscal 20 capital plan looks to address a backlog of capital projects without borrowing, but it does not fund all the requests made either. We're fortunate to get the largest earmark in fiscal 2019 out of all of Senator Tran's communities, as so I'm told, for the Turkey Hill asbestos abatement in the amount of $130,000 that will go towards funding projects in the fiscal 20 capital plan. Last year, I submitted projects that made it into a facilities bond bill, but it is unknown whether these projects will ever receive funding. To date, the governor has not released a funding mechanism to fund these projects. Therefore, my list of budget priorities would include a variety of current and future capital needs that have been requested through the capital planning process, projects that were included in the facilities bond bill, and also includes a grant application amount that was not funded by the Mass Office on Disability.
Are these bullets ranked?
No, they're in no particular order. I spoke to Nathan from Senator Tran's office today, kind of tried to get a sense of what our range of requests should look like. Because if our project was the largest capital project at $130,000, we're not going to put a multi-million-dollar request in. So he said put a mix of projects. So that's kind of how I focused it. So I included, because there's been a lot of discussion about the fuel tanks, $220,000 for the installation of new fuel tanks. $755,000 for the abatement of asbestos at TC Passios, which was in the capital plan but not funded for fiscal 20. $45,000 for an HVAC upgrade at the senior center. That's the front room, the oldest portion of the building, and that's in the capital plan for fiscal 22. But they could realistically use that now. $27,000 for the replacement of the handicap ramp at the town hall, which is in the facilities bond bill. $40,000 for the installation of new LED lighting fixtures at the library, which is in the facilities bond bill. And $50,000 for planning assistance to update the town's outdated ADA self-evaluation and transition plan, which was a grant application to Mass Office on Disability, but was not funded. So those were some of the projects I had.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Certainly.
On that $27,000 for the replacement ramp of the handicap ramp, does that include the sidewalk work you need to do to make that actually work?
No.
Can you throw that in?
You know what I would have to get. Yeah, I'd have. Right, so it's more of a complete package.
It doesn't really work if.
But now that's
you
in
can't get to it.
that's in the bond bill already, right? But we
Yes.
we don't know if we're going to get any of
Well,
that.
we may never get it.
But what so in other words, if we got 27 from the bond bill, what would it cost for us to put in the capital plan, the sidewalk work to go with it?
I can
Yeah.
get a
You know what I mean?
cost.
And then, I had a question on one.
No, I have another
Okay.
question. The $220,000 for the installation of new fuel tanks at the Department of Public Works. I know Dave Rogers mentioned that Fitchburg has eliminated using fuel tanks and has outsourced. They use gas stations, and they have a procurement plan. And I know that I forwarded you that information on Fitchburg. What did you find?
There was significant amount of discussion if you watched the last Finance Committee meeting. The DPW director provided a cost breakdown of the project itself, which would, excavation of the old tanks, that cost separated out from installation of new.
Because that was what, $330, right?
$330 total for.
Not including this.
No, including.
There's $110,000 that was voted at a previous town meeting under the fiscal 18 capital plan. So this is in addition to that. So it includes engineering work, of topographical studies, conservation measures, installation of the new tanks. There's limited options under that WEX program for Lunenburg.
I attended
was-
that finance meeting, and frankly, what I'll share with you is that both of the chiefs commented that the accessibility to gasoline at off hours and during emergencies is important. And in addition to that, this has already been before the Capital Planning Committee, and a member of the Finance Committee who was also on the capital plan said, looking at 330 sounds like a large number, but the life of these things is close to 30 years. So it's not a great capital expense if you put it out over the life of its usability. And they made significant points about the tanks used to be at the police station, and it was an inconvenience even to move them to the DPW. But during the ice storm, et cetera, all the gas stations closed down, and they didn't have the ability to service the vehicles that we were using in an emergency, et cetera. So I came away from that whole discussion as, the professionals that actually use the fuel tanks and the capital planning group that reviewed their request and approved it know a whole lot more about it than a well-intentioned idea of a citizen. And I agree that we should put it on here and see if we can get Senator Tran to get us some of the funding. But that alternative is not one that I would support, although nobody's going to ask me because it's now at the budget stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really just a citizen. I mean, Fitchburg is actually doing it. It's not like it was Dave Rogers' out of the blue idea. And the DPW is right next to the Mulpus, so if there's any fuel leakage or anything, it's a horrendous problem. I think we should really look at that more closely.
And Phyllis, did they say at Fitchburg, like if they have an emergency plan or how they handle those concepts of?
No, I just became aware that.
Because that might be interesting to ask people who are doing it how they plan to encounter any sort of crisis or crisis management plan. Or I know would there be, do they partner with gas stations that, I don't know how it works.
Yeah,
but I'm sure other places asked those questions and maybe there are answers.
I would suggest watching the Finance Committee. It might answer a lot of your questions, because they talked about the WEX program through.
What does WEX mean?
That's the card.
That's
the
card
program that Dave was
Fitchburg
suggesting
uses.
that Fitchburg uses, and it has some very, very significant shortcomings. And we do pay the chiefs a lot of money to make these decisions.
And Fitchburg is, has more options for gas stations than Lunenburg. One of the points made was that there's no state requirement, or actually federal, I think was, for gas stations to have auxiliary power. So if in the event and public safety plans for the, most absurd event that will happen, like the ice storm, that they need a gas supply in,
Oh, no,
in
yeah,
those
right, no,
cases.
I mean, Kate had a good, question that, how is Fitchburg handling that?
And can they set up a partnership with a gas station to have auxiliary power? Like would a private enterprise, collaborate on it?
And Lunenburg could use gas stations in Fitchburg. I mean, they're about a mile down the road. It's not like we'd have to use gas stations in Lunenburg.
No, like Hannaford is designated like an emergency store and they have more backup generation than other stores. And I'm not sure the details of it, but they're required to be like a more emergency-based grocery store. So I don't know if, I just don't know enough about it, but I think that there could be emergency planning on the private end, and then we don't have to deal with this item ever if somebody else is already permitted and dealing with fuel. So I think there's probably a lot to still learn and maybe save. And I will watch the meeting.
Yeah, me too.
Do you know what time that discussion happened at? That's really useful.
It was towards the end.
At about 53 minutes.
3 minutes, oh, thank you.
Not to discredit whatever happened prior to that.
And that was my budget presentation.
Oh, I'll watch that too then.
So if there's any, I'm not I wouldn't be torn if any of these projects weren't submitted. So if you want to remove that one, that's fine with me.
I think one of the, unless you have a strong priority, I think sometimes the best thing to do is give the senator all of them. Because it's, he knows what's, pardon the expression, he knows what's sexy on the hill at any given time. And if they're giving away money for asbestos, or if they're putting a cap at $42,300 or something like that, he knows which ones are most likely to be the best ones to put forward.
I think I'd like to prioritize two ones that we know have no uncertainty, like updating the HVAC at the senior center. Like, that seems super clear cut, versus if we don't get the funding to do the rest of the TCP project, what do we do with the 755? It almost could come premature to the rest of the plan. So I would look at it as one's, updating our ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. Like, yes, we definitely want to update that plan. So I would say, I would flip the list to say, what are the ones that we could definitely say yes to immediately? Putting a better ramp on a building, yes. But like the HVAC, that seems like there's not even any question there. I would definitely hesitate to take $755,000 for asbestos abatement in a building that a lot of people just said maybe could be leveled. So it seems like a funny ask where we haven't identified the plan. I'd want the plan to be concrete before we took on state money.
We would still have to abate the asbestos to demolish the building.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess we'd have to know if there's a difference in plan there, a difference in cost based on it, but that's a really good point. So, yes, let's abate the asbestos and demolish.
Well, if you've got to abate it regardless, then it's a good thing to leave on there. I don't know. I think that the fuel tanks is the only thing I'd take off, personally.
See, well, the fuel tanks is already approved in the capital plan, so if the town meeting approves it, we're spending it. So I'd like to leave it on there and see if Tran can get the dough.
I don't know that it's a good idea to do.
Well, then town meeting won't approve it. That's fine.
Oh.
But
well, let's put that one on the bottom of the list.
Fine. Fine.
I'd rather not have it on the list. When do you have to have this to send to Tran?
Today.
I mean, the chances of us getting all of them, I would...
No, but you could get the one you don't want.
So I agree with you that if there's one we're uncertain about or want to research about, then that would be the riskiest one to get.
How about this, if you prioritize them, because like Selectman Adams said, we're very unlikely to get the one on the bottom of the list if they know that's our lowest priority. So, and this will also help with the planning process as well.
I feel like HVAC at the senior center jumped out to me as like a completely non-controversial and logical ask.
As well as the replacement of the handicap ramp.
Yeah, so long as this is any future use that needs to be done for the building.
And the LED lighting fixtures, the things that we've already approved that are in the facilities bond bill, why not? And I guess the planning assistance.
So in that order, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then move.
And then the abatement.
5, and then the tank 6.
I'd take the tank off at this point, but that's just me.
I can't make an opinion on it having not watched input on the topic, so I feel like I'm pretty neutral on it because I heard Mr. Rogers' comment, and I like to think of something like removing a long-term obligation to the town and finding another way to accomplish it. And not really, I don't understand, and I'd have to go back and watch what the savings would look like. Obviously, the immediate savings is that you don't have to have these fuel tanks, so that's $330,000. But how does it shake out cost-wise in terms of getting your own fuel versus the fleet program? I don't know.
Right, right.
So it's like a second set of questions I would have. Like, is there any cost savings to having your own fuel, or is it actually cheaper to go acquire it from somebody who's buying it even more bulk, which would be like a Gulf station? So is it less expensive to get the
Yeah,
fuel
right,
through the
A certain
fleet?
portion of that 330 is to take the underground tanks out, which you have to do.
Right.
Will the
regardless.
110 we already have cover that versus this?
And I don't know, I
Yeah.
don't think it's an exact match though, is it?
It's, I believe it would.
The removal is already
Yeah, it was around
potentially funded.
50,000 for the labor cost, I
Okay.
think, for the,
Can you put the removal on the thing, or do you?
Well, we already have the 110 approved, so we can remove it with what already was allocated.
That's a thought, because you could
And then
spend
we
it on
could-
something else.
Yeah, right. Can you, I would be happy with,
Well, we have to
110 for
remove,
the-
right?
We have to remove
We have to.
regardless.
Okay.
So why don't we just put the 110 for the
And then we'd have
removal?
70 left for fuel through the fleet program. But I don't know enough to
What do
have
you really
a
need?
concrete opinion.
so, no.
So what do you
To be
need?
clear, 45,000 for the HVAC, 27,000 for the handicap ramp, 40,000 for the LED lighting, 50,000 for the planning assistance, the 755 for the abatement of asbestos, and 220 for the fuel tanks.
One
No,
something
110 for
one
the-
something they want to go for.
110 for removing.
All right.
Oh, we already
that
have
was
the
like
110.
2 years ago.
But we can use
that
something else.
I think that would be a stretch to ask for funding that we already have had for 2 years.
All right, so then just eliminate that one.
Well, I don't want to eliminate it. Can we put 100 towards that?
Yeah, but if you get it, then you have to do it, right? Or not? Are you obligated to do it if you get the money?
We can
That's-
always,
Or is there
We can
anything
always
else we could
return.
add, like, just like with the TC Passios, could we put hazardous waste abatement of materials in Old Primary just in case something happens there? I mean, are there any other things that just quickly we could think of quickly running our minds through the buildings, like, 10 grand new shutters? I mean, just, I don't know.
Just being practical, I don't know that if we were the highest one last time, that we're going to get a big ticket item next time, but I'm just trying to be practical. I think that the ones that you prioritize, I don't think we're going to get down to the 750 or the 220.
Correct, there's enough there that if we
So, I
got
mean,
it
you could
all,
put
we
them on
would
and
be
take them off.
champions.
I don't think we're going to get there, but
Yeah, we might get a little for the asbestos, You don't know.
you want to take it off? Take it off.
How do you feel?
I mean, I guess I would want to have better knowledge based on the options and the overall costs, and I haven't watched the finance committee meeting. It doesn't hurt to leave it there because the likelihood of getting all the way there is low, but I guess could we put an asterisk and tell him we have some uncertainty here, because I'd hate to put Senator Tran in a position where he's really advocating for something that and then we're like, oh, wait, never mind.
Well, let's not lose sight of the fact that it's in the capital plan, and if it gets approved at town meeting in 3 months, we're going to have it.
how about I submit the list as is? You have a follow-up discussion on this on March 5th, and I can always contact him after the
Formulate a
March
letter
5th
of-
meeting
Okay.
to reconsider that last item.
So just put it at the lowest priority
Yep.
item.
Is that good?
That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. All righty, coming down the home stretch. Committee reports.
Okay, I went to the Montechusett Regional Planning Committee meeting last Thursday, and really have nothing to report from it, but it's good to be there because they constantly just run through what communities are seeking help with and grants for. And what's kind of nice about being there and seeing the amount of communities that are involved versus the amount of communities that show up. And Lunenburg does utilize, when they do a list of communities that are utilizing things like the Green Community Task Force, and we always show up as like sort of utilizing and participating in these things that exist. So I guess that would be my comment, is it's nice to see that we are seeking assistance and help when possible, and then some communities just aren't utilizing the resources at all. So it's nice to see us show up. So obviously people are doing work there.
Anything?
Nope, nothing for me.
Nor do I. Any department reports?
No, just to follow up on a previous discussion though, during the workshop, do you want to add a agenda item for demolition delay permit
Yes.
for our next meeting?
Yeah, now that doesn't require a town meeting vote, that's just,
It would, so the action of the board would.
right, would start that, right?
And I was thinking if I could reach out to the APDC, because at that meeting, they didn't seem to be aware of the interior condition of that building.
Mm-hmm.
And I could coordinate a meeting with our facilities person for them to view it,
Okay.
to give them a better perspective on the actual condition.
Then we could have more honest sort of awareness and conversations about what's there. Yeah.
And at some point, I do want to talk about the information here and trying to figure out a way to peck away at some of the stuff that would help, that wouldn't cost us a lot of money.
And the complete streets sort
Yeah,
of prioritization. And that was
But I-
confusing because the figures weren't matching
Yeah.
financially.
I think the issue there, though, is that if we use this as a planning tool, there's certain stuff that we can do in our own capital plan, and then there's other stuff that we ask the state to consider as part of complete streets. And where I think the consultants can really add value is if they know that the state is hot to trot on bike
Yes.
paths or crosswalks, then we go that direction and we do the other stuff ourselves. You know, they know what they're
Yes.
funding this year, you know? But I just felt that we needed to be working from the same
Yeah.
document.
I like your idea that we've identified like a dangerous intersection. So then let's identify a plan regardless of complete streets.
Yeah, 'cause
If
it's
we
like-
want to put that out as a future item of,
This is like 5 different high crash sites, so.
like we've identified all these problems and we will do
Nothing.
Okay, so we'll make sure we get that on the,
Great.
I'm not sure at the next agenda, but
Yeah,
an
right,
agenda.
right. An agenda.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay. So our next meeting is March 5th. We have 3 meetings in March. We haven't worked out a workshop schedule, but we are still going to try to convene workshops with 2 groups, the abutters, so to speak, Library Senior Center and Boys and Girls Club. And I might add that I did mention at the Council on Aging meeting that we were going to do that. They were very excited. They still want to revisit the skate park and traffic and parking and a lot of those things, and felt that was a good opportunity for them to do that in conjunction with their neighbors.
Yeah, great.
But they really would like to do that in the daytime as well. And then one with town employees, PAC, and the school as users of wherever we go with that.
Can we arrange for a meeting during the day?
We'll just have to check our availability. Okay.
Who's going to coordinate that? Do you want Elaine to send something out to coordinate
why-
availability, or?
Yeah, that'd be good. I think we all said we'd consider it. We'd just see what they
Okay.
want to do. I mean, we may find out that the library and the Boys and Girls Club want to go a different direction, and then that gets problematic.
Okay.
Okay. All righty. Is there any public comment from the public? Please. Oh, wait a minute.
Rhonda Licio, 181 Reservoir Road. I just have a suggestion that from now on, the board members refer to the newest board member as Dr. Adams. It's a title that she's earned, and I think it would remind us to all speak to her with the amount of respect that she deserves. Thank you.
Dave Pastios, 56 Whiting Street. Kind of veered off a little bit, I think, on the agenda item when you get talking about the fuel tanks. I just would like to make one other comment, and then I'll have more prepared comments in the future. One of the things that's not being talked about is the cost of maintaining the new system for the next 50 years on an annual basis. Inspections, upkeep, so on and so forth. That's all I'll...
Of new fuel tanks?
That's right. They have to be inspected, they have to be certified, all of that on a yearly basis. So there's a lot of issues that really need to be evaluated there, as well as a real good look at the alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment from the public? Any public comment from the board?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Oops, I'm sorry. I was going to do a board comment, and thank Rhonda for acknowledging sort of the idea of participating in respect. If I feel like I have information or data or ideas, I don't understand why I haven't earned the ability to represent those ideas, even just based on the fact that we're all here through an election. And so I sit here with the backing of a group of community members that allowed me to be here. So if they liked my thoughts or my style or my rambling of data or whatever it was that caused them to choose me, I feel like a lot of times I'm just being, there was actually last meeting a motion made that I can't discuss a topic. And there can't be no legal backing for that. And it just, I do think there's, I know all 4 other selectmen had endorsed another candidate and whatnot, but now that we're all here, it is really frustrating to be subjected to constant eye rolls and being told that I can't participate in my ideas, because my ideas were very well known to the town when they elected me to be here. So just because I might be talking about town greens and concerns about the cost of a 55,000 square foot town hall, and once I was a public commenter as a citizen, I truly was just representing myself, but I made all those pieces of information known, and I was chosen to be put here, and I feel like I should be able to put that information and those alternative ideas into part of the discussion. And every meeting I am told I really can't share these ideas, and they're no longer just my ideas. They come from a lot of other people. So thank you for acknowledging, Rhonda. It's hard. I leave here discouraged every week, just trying to participate true facts and data. I put a lot of time and effort into studying and really understanding, and it is very difficult to participate here.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.